That's pretty good going, isn't it?
It's pretty good going. It's interesting because people have always said Twitter's on the verge of petering out, but there's been nothing really to go to. This could be it.
No, well, these things have to keep reinventing themselves, don't they? And I suppose this is... And it's called Threads.
Threads.
And have you been on it? Have you seen how it works?
Yes, I've signed up.
Is it understandable?
Yeah, it's just like Twitter.
Would I get it?
It's like Twitter. It's very similar to Twitter. So it's just a case of I just saw someone tweeting about it, actually, so I thought, well, better sign up to secure a name, otherwise, in case... But actually, you've got to use your Instagram name. You can't change it.
Can you not join it if you're not already on Instagram?
I don't think so.
Do you care?
I know. Is it another thing?
I just wonder whether we're not all buying into this idea that you've got to have a social media platform.
Yeah.
Do you really have to? I can understand maybe if you're in a business or you're selling a book or something like that. It really matters to have a certain amount of dedicated followers because they're the very audience you're preaching to. But I don't know whether ordinary people, if there's such a thing as an ordinary person...
Just day to day, do you need it? But then again, we hear from you, and that's interesting, isn't it? That's a nice connection. It provides a nice connection. But I don't know, it's one of those things, isn't it? But if it's new and it's there, you've got to sort of be on it, haven't you?
Well, I'll tell you something else we're going to be looking at. Would you pay more, if you're buying a house, would you pay more for a house that's got all the latest insulation and sort of green mod cons? Because things like if it had solar panels on the roof or if it had the plumbing done so you could actually use grey water to water the lawn or something like that, would you pay more for a house that's been designed for the 21st century?
It's going to go on the market for more, isn't it?
Yeah, it will, because it will be those things will be seen as a plus.
And it'll ultimately save you money in the long run.
Well, we're going to look into that a bit later. Apparently there is evidence that people would pay more for all of those things to be pre-installed and ready for them to use.
So let us know. We're talking to a guest 9:20 about that one. So let us know and keep your thoughts coming through on anything you want to talk about today. gbviews@gbnews.com. And you might have a view on this as well. Rishi Sunak facing more pressure as the Conservative Party is very likely to be hit by yet another by-election.
Yes, this comes after the MP Chris Pincher is now facing an 8-week Commons suspension because an inquiry found that he did grope 2 men at a club in London last year.
Well, let's talk to Emily Lawford, assistant editor at Prospect magazine. Morning to you, Emily. I mean, this is grim news because we all know by-elections, I mean, at the best of times tend to go against a sitting government, but it seems almost certain with these, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it's going to be a very, very tough time for Rishi Sunak. I expect most of these by-elections will not go his way. And, for example, Tamworth, Chris Pincher's old seat, that's currently got a 19,000 majority, but on the way current polls are looking, Tamworth looks to swing to Labour, and I expect the same thing is probably going to happen in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Selby and Ainsty, and David Warburton's old seat, Somerset and Frome. I think all of those current polls, all of those look risky, and with public anger, I think especially with this Chris Pincher one, because of the reasons for this by-election might encourage turnout against the Conservative Party because of the narrative that will surround this particular set of by-elections. So if I were Rishi Sunak, I really wouldn't be looking forward to this.
Well, he clearly isn't. I mean, the pressure facing him must be awful. But one does wonder how well prepared the other parties are to fight these by-elections too. I mean, aren't there rumours that Uxbridge just isn't getting... Labour in Uxbridge just doesn't really have an answer? And so you wonder if there's going to be an active vote against the Conservatives, what that vote will end up giving us.
That's a good question. And I think with all the different opposition parties vying to be the anti-Tory protest vote, which I think often happens in by-elections, and Liberal Democrat energy versus Labour being the automatic opposition, I think that could be difficult. And there is a chance of a vote split. In 2019, there was talk of a possible being able to unseat Boris Johnson, which obviously was ludicrous and didn't come remotely close, and that could happen again. So maybe that's what Sunak will be hoping will happen, that votes will split, different protest votes will go different ways, and we'll end up with Conservatives remaining in their seat. But on current swings, I don't think it's that likely.
Amidst all of this, we have the news as well that Number 10 is going to have to release all of Boris Johnson's unredacted WhatsApp messages and notebooks to the COVID inquiry. Do we know if is that likely to cause problems for the government, or is it likely to be positive news for Mr. Johnson?
I think, given the fact that the government has launched a very expensive and time-wasting judicial review into trying to stop them being released, would suggest to me that it will cause problems. I don't know what exactly Rishi Sunak doesn't want to come out, but it must be something, because it's quite unusual to put that much effort into stopping it coming out. And Boris Johnson, on the other hand, has seemed perfectly happy with the messages being released. He says he's got nothing to hide. So I think he obviously feels that it's absolutely fine for him. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of them.
It will. I wonder, I mean, you do wonder why they have put up such a fight. And again, as you point out, it's not Boris Johnson that's put up the fight against releasing them. It's the Cabinet Office. Do you think it's something the civil servants themselves are scared of coming out? I mean, obviously, their messages will be made public too.
It could be. I really wouldn't rule that out. I'm very interested to see what it ends up being shown. But the only person who seems to, I will expect to come out clear, is Boris Johnson, given he's the one who's open about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Isn't it really good to see you this morning? Emily, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Just make you wonder.
And I think there's a principle as well. If you have, even in your workplace, been using WhatsApp or maybe there are other encrypted end-to-end message systems, I don't know. But if you've been using them on the understanding and the trust that they are private from end to end. And now, if they're not anymore, there is a dangerous precedent there, isn't there?
Well, if you're forced to release them. But Ofcom, there's this separate story, isn't there, that Ofcom wants to be able to access all of these things as well.
So the right to an encrypted end-to-end message service may not be there anymore.
But then there's a public safety question around that. But, you know, sort of terrorist threats, or, I mean, you know, you can use these end-to-end encrypted things to say what you want.
Yes, bad people can speak to each other as well, yeah.
So I don't know. Do we have anything to hide? Do most of us in day-to-day life have anything to hide in our messages? I mean, there's always things that you wouldn't want people to see.
But there may be things that you wouldn't want your partner to see or your children to see.
Yes, but they could still see if they got your phone, couldn't they? The fact
they could get into your phone.
Yeah, but the fact that they're encrypted is a whole different... It doesn't need to be encrypted.
I found this was a fascinating debate that was on GBNews at some time earlier this week I was watching, about whether you would let your partner read your phone.
Yeah.
Have access, complete open access to your phone.
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
That's good. I don't think...
The whole,
I don't know whether
the whole face unlock thing that you do now, we've both registered on each other's phones.
They could just hold up your phone to your face while you're sleeping.
Well, they could do, yeah, but my husband's stuff is all registered on mine and I can open his.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I ever look at it.
I don't know whether you'd let your children, because...
No, children, no.
I know. I mean, I say things to other people about my children, about caring for them, about looking after them. We always ask each other, how are your children, how are they getting on? And I don't know whether I'd particularly want my children to read exactly what I say about them to friends.
I mean, I can access my parents' phones.
Can you?
Yeah. Sorry. If you
where
want
does
to.
privacy stop?
But I don't go in and look at... I wouldn't go in and look at their messages.
No.
It's only if I ever need to get in to do something, you know, it's like, oh, I need to... If they can't do something, I can grab their phone and do it.
But what if you grabbed their phone to, you know, just check that they'd paid a bill they were said that I'd, you know, something like that, housekeeping sort of thing. And then you just by accident happen upon a message that mentions you or that says something maybe about their own health that you didn't know. Suddenly, I don't know, where do you stop? Because a phone now is your absolute Bible. It's your personal Bible.
It is, yeah.
And I don't know whether you want everybody absolutely peering into your soul quite that way.
No, I would agree, but then I think there's got to be a difference between... I'd always be a little bit suspicious if someone wouldn't let their partner see their phone.
Yes, well, that's the other thing.
I'd be like, what are you hiding?
But they shouldn't be asking anyway. They shouldn't be asking you for access to your phone, should they?
No.
I don't... Where do you draw the line? And have you had any awful moments where you have accidentally caught something on your partner's phone?
Oh, yes.
Or whether you've asked, can you just check something, and they haven't given you the phone?
It's when, if you have a relationship and people ordinarily, if they leave their phone, go to the toilet, whatever, if all of a sudden they start taking it with them, or always making sure it's locked before they go anywhere. Oh, that's a suspicious thing. Oh, any good stories on that? Let us know.
Please, GBViews at gbnews.com.
It's 11 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today.
A parliamentary committee report says the government still doesn't know what it's trying to achieve with the HS2 station at Euston, despite it spent 8 years planning and designing the station.
Yeah, the station work has been suspended for 2 years, but the government says it's committed to delivering the project in a cost-effective way.
A man handcuffed himself to the gates of Buckingham Palace yesterday afternoon.
The Met Police says he also threatened to harm himself, and the London ambulance was called to the scene too. He was later detained under the Mental Health Act.
And Twitter is threatening to take legal action against Meta over the new social media platform Threads.
More than 30 million people, it's gone up to 30 million now, have signed since the app launched on Wednesday night. But Twitter says it's stealing ideas and trade secrets. And while you're busy on your phone looking at Twitter and Threads and what it all means...
Keeping your phone away from your partner.
And keeping away from your partner. Do you use your phone when you go shopping? Is it now your wallet or your purse? Because a lot of people just aren't happy that cash is disappearing. The GB News Don't Kill Cash campaign is gaining momentum. Now, we here at the People's Channel continue to fight to protect those of us in the country who really rely on cash and feel like they're being left behind.
Yes, the petition has now topped over 147,000 signatures following its launch on Monday. That ain't bad, is it? To help save the pound or the coins in your pocket, if you want to get involved, grab your phone. That's sort of weird. Grab your phone and scan the QR code and sign.
Yes, and the QR code, if you're not sure, is that bit under where it says campaign.
Can you explain to me, then, do you have to you have to use your camera? And
so
put the camera on your phone at that?
Yeah, all you do is you open your camera, go as if you're taking a picture of the QR code, and it should bring up a little link on the screen that you just click on.
You automatically go to.
Yeah, or you can just go to gbnews.com/cash.
Slightly sort of weird that the way to join a petition to stop going too digital is to use a digital platform.
It's the thing, though, isn't it?
That's the way things are going, yeah. Absolutely.
It's the nature of things. Yeah. Now, 4 boys tragically lost their lives after falling through ice on a lake in Solihull in December.
Yeah, but do you remember? It was awful, wasn't it? Well, a preliminary hearing heard that they died from the effect of drowning, and today the inquest into their deaths is set to conclude at the Birmingham Coroner's Court.
Well, our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson reminds us now of what happened.
A tragedy that shook a community. On the 11th of December last year, brothers 6-year-old Samuel and 8-year-old Finley Butler and their 11-year-old cousin Thomas Stewart were playing on a frozen lake in Solihull when they fell through the ice and got stuck. 10-year-old Jack Johnson, who had seen the 3 struggling in the water, heroically jumped in to help. Emergency services were first called to the scene when members of the public and police officers initially went into the water to try and get the youngsters out. One police officer, so desperate to help the boys, was seen punching through the ice. The children were rescued by specialist water rescue trained firefighters, where they were given immediate life support and rushed to hospital in a critical condition. The next day, West Midlands Police and West Midlands Fire Service revealed the news the community had been dreading.
We are deeply saddened by the death of 3 boys who were rescued by our firefighters yesterday here at the lake in Solihull. The boys' deaths are a tragedy beyond words, and the thoughts and heartfelt sympathies of everyone here at West Midlands Fire Service are with their families, friends and the wider communities at this distressing time. Frozen lakes, ponds, canals and reservoirs can look picturesque, but they can be lethal, and there are no greater warnings of this than yesterday's tragic events.
2 days later, 6-year-old Samuel had died in hospital, and all 4 children involved had now sadly passed away. As the news was confirmed, Kingshurst mourned the Babs Mill boys with flowers, teddy bears and tributes.
I'm not surprised to see this. I'm saddened to see it because, you know, I wish it never ever happened and we'd still got the kids with us, but, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't know the children, but they're Kingshurst children. That's what makes the difference. You can feel the sadness in the air. As soon as you walk anywhere in Kingshurst, people are just
Sad.
in bits.
Everyone that's got kids can really relate to what we feel broken as a community, and it's just the feeling that we all want to help and just show that we care, really.
Senior coroner for Birmingham and Solihull, Louise Hunt, described the circumstances as a devastating tragedy and allowed all 4 to be buried without a post-mortem to preserve the dignity and respect of each little boy. Jack Carson, GB News.
Oh, just reminded of such a terrible tragedy.
And just before Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, not that it makes any difference.
Well, it sort of adds to the tragedy, doesn't it? Eek.
Awful. Got to hope lessons can be learnt from that. But we say that every time, don't we?
Yeah. And you'll never stop kids being kids and wanting to potter around near water. Unless you keep your eye on them all the time. And how can you do that all the time? I don't know. There's no real answer, is there? And then look at what happened at the school in Wimbledon yesterday. The safest place you can imagine, along with lovely caring adults, end of term, having a little party on the grass. You just cannot get your head around some of these tragedies.
No, you cannot. Sadly, it's the world we live in.
That's why we have to talk about good things.
Nice things as well.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Talking about saving cash, we only mentioned it. Another 400 people have signed in the last few minutes. If that was one of you,
God,
thank you
feel
very much
strongly
indeed.
about it.
Yeah, so you can go to gbnews.com/cash if you want to sign up to that petition. And later on in the programme, we're going to be talking about energy-efficient homes.
And whether you'd pay more to buy one.
Yeah, because it would save you money, wouldn't it, in the long run? Anyway, we've got money-saving tips coming up for you. This is Breakfast on GB News.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
6:22 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, how much do you care about green stuff, green laws, things that are going to help us fight climate change? The government is planning on dropping its £11.6 billion aid pledge, according to a note to ministers, which has been seen and leaked by The Guardian.
Yeah, now the memo suggested it would squeeze out room for other commitments, such as humanitarian work for women and girls.
However, a government spokesperson claims that the rumours are entirely false.
Well, let's talk to Jim Dale, senior meteorologist at the British Weather Services. Good to see you this morning, Jim. I mean, what do you make about this? What could be then a change in priorities?
Yeah, it was a commitment made by this government to the world and the poorer countries of the world where climate change is going to impact more greatly. I don't know. I mean, you just said that it's almost like flag waving. See what the reaction is. One of those situations. So it isn't quite cut and dried yet whether they actually take away the direct climate change money. I think it's about 11 billion. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's about where it is. And as a scientist, I think this is the wrong direction of travel. I think this is, look, Stephen and we've seen this week some startling figures across the world. I'll just give you a couple. So we know that in the UK, June saw its hottest, or we can call it warmest ever June in the UK. That happened. It also happened globally when all the figures came in. So globally, it's been the hottest June ever. That's everybody added up, everything from Antarctica all the way through the equator, left, right, and centre. We've seen we've seen the Canadian fires. We saw a huge storm that affected, I think, was climate change affected in Holland this week that killed a couple of people. I'll give you a little facts as well. Africa yesterday saw its highest minimum temperature ever, a place called Adrar in Algeria. Seems a long way away, but 39.6 degrees Celsius as a minimum temperature is what occurred yesterday. So Africa's highest minimum temperature. So you can see the clock is ticking.
Do you worry that because we're all worried now about the economy, we're worried about how we're going to pay our mortgages, that actually that trend is going to reverse the trend where we were beginning to really get, even the deniers were beginning to get the idea of climate change? Do you worry that that's actually reversing and we're going to become a nation of climate change deniers again?
Yeah, it's a very good point, Anne. Look, I come on your programme, not so much, I say GBNews and other stations, and I have discussions, can we say, with climate deniers. They're still out there. They are a fringe, can make that absolutely clear. And I don't want to use the wrong words here, but misinformation should be stopped, because that's exactly what it is. The scientific community, all the way from NASA, NOAA, the World Meteorological Organization, right through to the Hadley Centre, the Met Office, they're all at one. And the IPCC saw this and put their messages out at the last COP to say exactly what is going on. And now we can see it in its rawest form. I really actually believe we're at a tipping point. So the denying side, I think, is for different reasons, often for quite selfish reasons, maybe financial reasons that they say what they say. But it's a discussion that should be had. Am I worried? Yeah, I think you've got to have a concern. Worry is probably a bit too strong, but I think we have to have a concern that the siren voices are very loud and that they're out there. And my community, the scientific community, and I think most of the population understand what's going on and that we have to do things about this, albeit in an evolutionary way rather than a revolution. I think we're a bit late for the revolution. I think the war's already started, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I suppose the issue is, and obviously the government's denying this at the moment, and we don't know what exactly would happen to the money if it wasn't used for this, but it's just shy of £12 billion. Well, it's a drop in the ocean when it comes to the international, the global look at climate change, but actually could have a significant impact back here at home at the moment. I mean, that's the argument, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a fair argument to have. This is the sort of discussion that should be being had. you know, it's money coming from the UK, but we've made that promise. The world has, you know, the development world has made similar promises, and I'm not sure they're negating on it. But I think you call it being stuck between a rock and a hard place, don't you? That's about where we are with this, given the economic malaise that we've got in this country, caused primarily by the same government that are making this decision now. So, yeah, it's a toughie. I'm not. You know, it's not for me to run away from it or to walk towards it, but it's other people who make those decisions. But all I would say, from my standpoint as a meteorologist for the last 40 years, that this is much wanted. And if we don't donate this, if we don't put this money across, then what's going to happen? Those countries that are most at need are going to struggle into the future in terms of their infrastructure, combating climate change, and when it does happen, recovering from it. And then you've got the situation, if there's no food, no water, for example, in drought situations, that the pressures on migration become that much higher. So it's a long piece of string rather than a short one.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like a lovely day behind you in High Wycombe there. You've got a beautiful blue sky and green trees. That's the best of British. Let's hope it doesn't get too hot for the rest of us.
I always come out and make the most of these kind of weather, Anne, because as a weatherman, if you like, you know, make the most of the blue sky. Today, for the most part, as you know from Alex just a few minutes ago, it's a very nice day for England and Wales today, and it will eventually get to most of Scotland and Northern Ireland. But watch your back this weekend for those thunderstorms. Some of those could be well severe.
OK, we shall bear that in mind. Jim, good to see you.
Don't
Thanks
leave the
very much
lawnmower
indeed.
out. That's what I did.
Oh, did you? In the rain?
Yeah.
Oops.
I haven't tried it yet to see if it still works. Luckily, it didn't have the battery in.
Oh, right.
But I don't know. It's one of those cordless ones. But I don't know whether or not, yeah.
I'd leave it for a couple of weeks.
You can't take anything for granted now.
No, you
think the
can't.
weather's good, or you wake up the next morning and it's thundered in the night. And, yeah, so, yes, I left the lawnmower out. See, I'm not used to having a lawnmower because I used to have plastic grass.
Oh, yeah, no, you don't.
No, I'm more eco-friendly. I've got real grass, and now you have to cut it.
Yes, you do.
Who knew?
Yes, you do. Mind you, nice weather is good for the postman, of course. And talk about having secrets on your phone. Bernard in Salford said, "What's up with writing a letter and posting it? Old-fashioned, but it works." It does. We all want instant responses, though, don't we, Bernard? That's the trouble. But I know there's
It's nice to get a letter or a card, isn't it?
There's something lovely about a letter.
Yeah. Karen says, Stephen, if anyone opened my phone, they couldn't see my WhatsApp because it is passcoded. I suppose you can passcode absolutely anything, can't you?
Pretty much.
But then try and remember the code.
Well, yeah. Do a lot of it with...
So many different codes and passwords for things.
I thought about doing that with my WhatsApp, just for general security thing. It popped up on the thing about improving your security. Yeah. But it's such a faff when you want to get in it.
Yeah. Yes, that's the thing with all these digital things, is they're a terrible faff.
And there's nothing on it that I'm...
You know, we were talking about threads.
You can have a look at my phone if you want. Yeah, go on.
Might do. I might take you up on that. I bet it would take hours to read through all your stuff.
Would, yeah.
You've got so much. Emma says, I signed up for Threads at 6 a.m. yesterday, and I was told I was the 8,297,600th person to do so. I really like it at the moment. It's full of creative arty types like me. I will admit it was the last app I looked at last night, and it was the first I opened this morning. I think it's fair to say I'm already hooked.
Oh, there you go. Well, I'm not hooked. I went on it, but I've only posted one thing to sort of say I'm here. So I posted a picture of you, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, me and you.
On Threads. So we're on Threads already. Oh, that's interesting. Would you pay more for a house that has got things like modern eco-modifications, you know, like a different plumbing system that uses grey water to water the lawn, or special insulation that would mean that you'd really save money, or anything like that? And Rachel says, of course, a house with those modern modifications will be worth more. The question is whether those things will pay for themselves, or if you're better off doing it yourself.
Yeah,
but I agree with John.
Depends what the... Yes, John's right.
Yeah, he says that the government should put into law that any new house built should have heat pumps, solar panels, so on, a car charger on the drive.
Yeah, all those things. We're all going to need them, so why not build them on automatically? I think that's a very good idea, John. John for Prime Minister. That's what I'm saying. Up next, we've got all the news and views from this morning's papers. This is Breakfast on GB News. 6:34, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Should we take a look at today's newspapers then? And the Daily Mirror leads with the horrific crash which killed one little girl and injured 16 others yesterday in Wimbledon after a Land Rover crashed into a school.
The Times leads with a flight disruption that could affect a third of European holidays. Now, traffic controllers are threatening to strike.
The Guardian, meanwhile, says ministers have been ordered to hand over messages from the former Prime Minister to the COVID inquiry after losing their legal challenge.
Let's have a look inside the Mirror for you. And there's a picture of Golden Girl Katie Boulter, who's continuing her Wimbledon winning streak. She beat Victoria Tomova to get through to the third round.
And then there's this openly public display of affection. The Prince of Wales seen kissing his wife, my goodness, at polo, at the Guards Polo Club in Windsor.
Why is it all cheek on cheek? That's how I'd kiss you in the morning.
Yeah, no, but it's
you.
a bit more... well, they can't snog in public, can they?
Can't they? Why not?
Well, you've got 3 kids.
A little
I know,
peck on the lips.
Yeah, I know they've got...
I did, but my wife last night kissed me like that, but on the cheek. And
Did
what
she?
are you doing? She said, I'm wearing makeup, I don't want to put it on your face.
You see, if you see the other pictures, they rush towards each other and it looks really romantic and lovely, and then they just sort of grab and have a kiss. And I suppose the newspapers have gone for that photo because she's showing her face to you. I think that's what it is. But it was it was a proper affection, which is nice.
As you can see, Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and political journalist Emma Burnell are both here. Good morning. Did you have a nice little welcome kiss when you saw each other this morning?
We did not embrace.
not.
You were doing your makeup.
I was having my makeup done, which is very essential at this time in the morning.
Absolutely. Makeup is more important than affection at this time in the morning.
In the Times, Emma, looking at European flights and delays.
So it's the flight controllers who are talking about going on strike. And this is, they negotiate across Europe. So this will affect flights going in and out of Europe. For British viewers, this will affect flights going in and out of Europe. It will affect flights across Europe. And it seems like their key demand is, it's not particularly about money, it's about capacity. So their immediate demand is they have to hire 20 more staff because they just say they cannot do their job safely at the moment. And that, they're obviously very, very concerned about that. And frankly, so should the rest of us be.
Absolutely. If it's only 20 more staff they want, then I would say
absolutely. That doesn't seem an unreasonable demand.
No. Where is this then? Where are these air traffic controllers?
Well, they're all over, but they negotiate with with Brussels, so the regulator in Brussels.
Right. 20 doesn't seem like a lot, does it?
Not really. But have you noticed everybody I know who's taken a flight recently said there's been a problem? Yeah. I flew from Scotland a few weeks ago to London. Complete disaster.
I mean, I should chide you about the carbon of that.
I know people did.
What you said it was an absolute disaster?
Absolute disaster, yeah. Flight was cancelled, every other flight was cancelled, everything was going wrong. Yeah. EasyJet disaster.
It just feels like, I think there was such a long period where they drove down the cost of everything in flying, and then the pandemic came and that model was exposed as very, very broken, and it just hasn't come back up because, all of the people who were kind of necessary to making those flights work have either found that they could get better jobs elsewhere or are striking over pay and conditions, and the whole kind of system seems to have really been exposed.
Well, look, you need it to be safe. That's the bottom line with these sort of things.
Yeah.
In the Times, page 2 of the Times, looking at our energy prices, Freddie, which don't seem to be coming down.
Well, yeah.
Well, not as much as we want, anyway.
I bring you more bad news. We've been saying all year that energy prices are going to start coming down, and they should be coming down because
and they have.
Wholesale prices have come down a long time ago, and they've come down a bit. But no, the Times have done a story that apparently we should expect to pay current levels until about 2035.
Oh!
But based on rising demand, or where's the rising demand coming from?
That we're using more energy.
But aren't we all using less?
Apparently we're using more, according to this one analyst. But I think this is a sort of negative spin on the overall story, which is that they are hopefully now finally coming down.
Yeah.
But it's taken too long.
Yeah, it has taken too long.
I had a smart meter fitted about a month ago, and I'm obsessed with it now. You have a little app on your phone, and it's like every time I only switch on one set of the lights in my living room now, and really conscious of. And what I am conscious of is the difference between what it says I'm using and the bill I'm getting.
Oh,
now
really?
I realise that it's summer, so what they do is they do stack up the bills in the summer because my use will be higher in the winter. But it'd be very interesting to watch that on a daily basis in the winter.
So you never submit a reading?
Not anymore. The smart meter submits it directly to the company now.
I hate submitting.
But equally on the app, you can see when your usage is going up or not.
I can see what my daily usage is, what the cost of that is, how many...
What really makes a difference? What really uses power?
The shower, which obviously you can't go without.
An electric shower?
No, mine's gas, but this is both of them.
Right.
The shower is the big spike in gas use. If I'm cooking, that's a big thing. The kettle is crazy.
Really?
Yeah. The kettle uses more energy than my filter coffee maker. So...
Well, it's heating more, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
And what about washing machine, things like that?
So I run my washing machine on the eco setting. So
you are very energy conscious.
I'm determined to be as energy efficient as I can, and I'm lucky. I have a flat that was quite modern, so it's cool in summer and hot in winter. So I realise how lucky I am. But yeah, the washing machine and the dishwasher. You go out, you put the dishwasher on, you come back and you check the app, and blimey. I used a lot of energy while I was out.
Yeah,
it's a good
scary,
thing, really, isn't it, to be very conscious of it?
Absolutely.
We've got to learn to value it more.
But we don't need any heating on this weekend. Freddie, according to the Mirror, there's a health alert over the heat being issued. You don't strike me, Freddie, as someone who enjoys the hot weather too much.
No, I'm not crazy about the real heat. I struggle to sleep, particularly in London in these kind of heats. But apparently it's going to get worse this weekend. Over 6 regions of Britain, all over Britain, it's going to be boiling hot. Apparently, which will be good for the sport that's on.
Test
match might be finished.
God, can you imagine trying to play tennis in that kind of heat, though?
Except they are used to it. Yes, in other countries they play it even.
But I think it's been a freakishly tropical summer.
It's been very humid
so far.
Well, we had the hottest June since records began. And then we had that week of slightly more changeable weather as we came into July, but we're going back to where we were looking like we were going in June.
You start to see how, if this continues, it's going to change our habits. Yeah. For instance, I remember when it was very hot, a couple of weeks ago, I felt guilty not being out in the garden and just, lapping up the sun, because I would pay good money to go on holiday to get that degree of sun. And suddenly you think, well, if that's what it's going to be like in Britain, it could be very good for staycationers, for the British tourist industry, but bad for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
It change our habits.
I always say I like it to be 40 degrees when I've got a pool to jump into on holiday, but when you're trying to do your general working practice, it's a bit less, bit less fun.
That's what's so odd, is that so many people are taking foreign holidays this year.
Yeah.
When you'd have thought this is the year to staycation.
Yeah, but they'd already booked them, probably.
They've already booked them.
Yeah.
Plus, you want a change of scenery, don't you?
I think a lot of people...
And a change of culture.
Or I think a lot of people are thinking this year has been quite rubbish and we need to get away.
Yeah.
But I think that next year, there'll be a lot more staycations.
Yeah, maybe I should dig up my grass and I won't have to mow it and put in a pool.
No, you need your grass. It's lovely.
I might need a pool more.
Yeah, I go. It's like, go pool. I'm team pool.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I bet Boris Johnson's got a pool in his new spot. But his messages are all being handed over to the COVID inquiry at last.
Yeah, the Boris messages are probably less of the story, partly because he's already said, you can have them all, although it was slightly disingenuous because it was all off one phone that we came after most of the decision-making. But actually, this sets a precedent that all of these messages between government ministers can be seen. Now, I think we need to be really clear. They can be seen by the people running the COVID inquiry. That's not the same as all of us getting to see all of their messages. So the COVID inquiry will only release as evidence ones that are pertinent to the inquiry. But there are, I would suggest, concerns about the decision-making process during COVID. I think if I were Rishi Sunak, I would be wondering what messages did I get about the impacts of Eat Out to Help Out, things like that. We've already seen Matt Hancock's messages being not what you might want from the health minister at the time. So there are real concerns. And I think there's a deeper problem, which is that you need to have a system whereby cabinet ministers can talk to each other in reasonable confidence.
And talk to the civil servants.
And talk to the civil servants in reasonable confidence and reasonably aware of the fact that that's not going to leak. But then you go right the way to the other extreme and government by WhatsApp and very, very casual decision-making with no minuting and those really informal decision-making. So there's got to be some sort of comfortable space.
Mind you,
the
COVID inquiry is looking at a period where it was difficult to be face-to-face with, you know, with your ministers or whatever.
Indeed.
And WhatsApp was vital.
Well, indeed, although I think we all saw the pictures of Matt Hancock managing to get around that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I say the problem, the thing that worries me about this, Freddie, is, and we all know it, we all do it, that context.
Yeah.
And you lose context in looking at a text message, don't you?
Irony is lost sometimes if you just clip a little WhatsApp group. But I think ministers and politicians do need to get off WhatsApp, because I think we constantly see stories about like Westminster WhatsApp groups, and they all they fight with each other, and it all gets leaked and then passed on, screenshotted, and so on. And I think WhatsApp's bad news. I mean, I say that as a WhatsApp addict.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing, isn't it?
Politicians need to stop using it, definitely.
Yeah.
And Emma's absolutely right. I think Rishi Sunak's the person that's most worried about this. It's not Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson's now like, everybody hates me now, I don't care. And Rishi Sunak thinks that there is embarrassing stuff that may come out.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. There's plenty of other platforms they could use where things could be more formally minuted for more formal discussions.
That's it. And again, I do think it's important that politicians are able to test ideas that we might be like, oh, don't do that, that's crazy. But, you need to have those kind of discussions and the ability to have them. But it is about a context. So I think one of the worries is, they might just be slagging each other off or whatever. Those won't be the ones the COVID inquiry will release. It'll be the ones that were about impactful decisions in COVID. So I think a lot of the concern about prurience is not really warranted.
I hope so, because otherwise it's just tabloid fodder.
Exactly.
And we'll be debating it for months and months and probably years.
Endlessly talking about people's WhatsApps, which is quite tiresome.
Yeah.
But Threads, maybe they'll just all talk on Threads.
Maybe. Maybe Threads is... Well, there's no private messaging on Threads yet.
You've now all got Threads accounts.
Yes.
Well, I have.
I haven't.
No.
I
haven't.
Oh, Freddie, get with the programme.
Get with it. OK.
Get with the programme.
It took me long enough to get used to Twitter, and now I've got to get used to Threads.
Well, it's exactly the same.
It's pretty much exactly, but without DMs. So there's no DM sliding yet.
But if you get things that go sort of viral on Threads, would they be thread worms?
Oh, very good, Anne.
I don't know, but you might have earned yourself a whole lot of money by saying that.
That is...
Trademark it.
Oh, all right, trademark it.
Freddie.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
The Princess of Wales may be on Threads, but I bet she's got a very secret account.
Do you know about...
How do they do all that?
Do you know about silly season in the papers? Of course you do.
Yes.
You're a journalist. But this is, I mean, much as I like looking at pictures of the Princess of Wales, this is just the fact that she drank a glass of champagne at the polo. And this is a story, page 13.
Well, you don't often see her absolutely quaffing it. It's nice to know that she does.
I'd love to see her falling out of a nightclub. That would be amazing.
That'd be great.
She never would.
I know, that's the problem.
She wore a £550 baby blue midi dress.
I don't like it.
It's boring.
Oh, I think she looks gorgeous.
Oh, I think
so boring.
quite elegant.
Have we shown it? Let's hold it up.
Hold it up.
Yeah. Keep holding. There we go. Yeah.
I don't...
Look, she'd look good in a bin bag, but that looks really nice.
It's not stylish enough for her, I don't think.
No,
it's fairly shapeless, isn't it?
It is shapeless.
Yeah.
It was just a nice day out watching the polo.
Well, I mean, this is it, but the fact that it's made the papers that she had a glass of champagne and wore a quite expensive, quite nice, some think quite boring, others think dress, is not a national news story.
But even though it is, I know, Emma, with your Republican leanings, even though it's tiresome, it's better than reading about airports.
Well, yeah, it is. We all need something. Mind you, what's this in the Express, Emma? About an estate, a 9,000-acre estate that we could all be looking at buying.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got, you know, that spare 35 million down the back of the sofa, you too could own half of this.
Where is it?
This amazing, amazing estate. I've forgotten.
Northumberland.
Northumberland. That's it.
Oh. Duke of Northumberland.
Well, it looks like, from the picture we're showing, that it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Well, it owns. There's an awful lot of farmland and villages, and it brings in quite a lot of income every year in terms of rents and things. So, it's a very, very large swath of land in which there is both a castle and all of the land and estates around.
You're buying
it.
a business, really, aren't you?
Essentially, yeah.
You're buying an income almost, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
You
know
get to be the
who
feudal lord.
Who this son of the Duke... Is he the Duke? Yeah, he's the Duke now.
He's the Duke, yeah, and he's 20...
Who did he used to work for?
He used to work for Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Did he?
He interned at Jacob Rees-Mogg's capital firm.
Every British aristocrat, I think, has worked for Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Really? Well, it's part of the it's part of the process.
Old
Part of the
tie.
secret of his success, darling.
It's why he's still around.
Blimey, yeah. I'd quite like an estate in Northumberland.
Well, have you interned for Jacob yet?
No.
No, he interned for me, though, didn't you?
I did intern for you, yes.
Oh, I thought you meant Jacob Rees-Mogg.
No.
No, we haven't quite got there yet.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, back in the BBC days at Pebble Mill, I was there.
Yeah.
Nicking stuff off your set.
Yeah.
Did you spot the talent immediately, did you think?
No, I didn't even see him.
No, we never actually met, no. No, I was very much back room. But I did pinch a couple of napkin rings.
Well, quite right, too.
I didn't even know we had napkin rings.
Well, you didn't after he'd been there.
Maybe that's why. He kept disappearing off the set.
Light-fingered Dixon, that's what they used to call me. That's the good old days where I used to have a packet of silk cut and a bottle of scotch in my briefcase.
Is that right?
Yeah, I used to carry it into Pebble Mill every day, a bottle of scotch and a packet of fags.
Blimey.
I'm not sure that was allowed.
Probably not.
Pebble Mill at 1, so 1 in the afternoon you had...
It wasn't. Pebble Mill was the building, and we did Good Morning from there.
When would you open the scotch?
Yeah, why did you carry it with you everywhere?
I don't know when I used to drink it. I don't know. I always had it in my briefcase.
Really? And how, one bottle a day?
No. But, you know, I was sort of 19, 20. I thought it was the thing to do as a journalist. You had to have a bottle of scotch and a packet of fags.
Everyone trying to be Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, it was the image. Felt very cool. But anyway, those days are long gone. Look, thank you both, Emma, Freddie. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
I love the idea of Jacob Rees-Mogg interning for me.
Yeah.
Just see what you can do about that.
Love it,
You made him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, dear. Now, we've been busy chit-chatting about WhatsApp, haven't we? Should Ofcom be able to read our personal messages? Well, that's a debate on everyone's lips after recent clashes surrounding the online safety bill.
Well, the Home Secretary has said that plans to introduce end-to-end encryption on Facebook and Instagram would be a huge boon to anyone who wants to hurt a child.
Is that a fair point? Well, let's talk to Dr. Maddie Aish, Associate Professor in Computer Science and Cybersecurity at Middlesex University. Really good to see you this morning. Why are there so many fears about end-to-end encryption? Because, I mean, most of us are using it, whether we know it or not, already.
Correct, absolutely correct. So that kind of technology has already been implemented by different types of platforms. Some of these platforms come with this kind of encryption by default, and some of them offer that as an extra kind of feature that you can buy to.
Just for the sake of people who don't quite get what end-to-end encryption is, can you explain how it works?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So in a very simple term, with this kind of technology, the sending device will encrypt the data using specific keys, encryption keys. Then that encrypted data will be sent over the network to the recipient device. It's only then the recipient device will be able to use the corresponding keys to decrypt the message. Because this encryption and decryption take place only by the communicating endpoints, we call this technology end-to-end encryption. So the end result is that the network itself will not be able to see your data.
Yeah, so anyone who could hack into it or anyone who looks at the servers where it's all stored can't actually read any of it. But all this implies that Ofcom and other agencies should, I mean, for the sake of our protection, should be able to access these servers and see what we're all saying. Well, does that sound right to you?
End-to-end encryption presents definitely challenges to law enforcement agencies, because the fact that the data itself or the content itself is encrypted now, that means platforms that decided to use this kind of technology might not be able to perform content moderation. We know that that might lead to scenarios where criminals might leverage this technology to distribute content that includes, for example, illegal contents related, as you rightly say, to child exploitation materials, for example, hate speech, terrorist propaganda, and so on. So it is definitely a challenge for law enforcement agency to be able then to access this data and prevent those criminals from communicating.
But this is presumably already happening now. There's no way we're going to have a law that takes us backwards and makes end-to-end encryption illegal, surely?
I don't think that's the discussion is about banning end-to-end encryption. I think what is needed at this stage is for the platform themselves and the likes of law enforcement agency and Ofcom to sit down and talk about how can they work together to enable third-party organization like Ofcom, for example, which is regulating the whole communication space in the United Kingdom, to be able to have proportionate access to these materials, or find and discuss ways that the platform themselves will perform their kind of due diligence to check the contents and raise any alerts in case of suspected or suspicious behaviors, then allow law enforcement agencies to investigate this.
Okay, Dr. Hayes, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. If you've got a view on that, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Here's your weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of July. Today, more pressure on the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak could face a fifth by-election after the MP Chris Pincher was suspended for 8 weeks.
Inquests into the deaths of 4 little boys who died after falling through the ice on a frozen lake is going to be held later today. We'll look back at what happened.
Should Ofcom be able to read our personal messages? Well, it's being discussed. Let us know what you think.
And homeowners may have to spend almost £14,000 on improving energy efficiency measures. Consumer champion Will Hodson will be joining us later in the programme to explain how to do it and what it means for you.
And how's your weather going to look this weekend? Could be nice.
It's a damp start for some, but many will be very warm and sunny today. The weekend promises some big thunderstorms, however. Join me later for a full GB News weather forecast.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've been talking about going cashless. We've started our campaign, actually, Don't Kill Cash. And if you want to join, you can sign up at gbnews.com/cash. And we'll show you a QR code you can scan with your mobile phone a little bit later on. Karen says, I've got big concerns that with banks closing all over the country, get my teeth in, especially in smaller towns, that retailers can't bank any cash they take and therefore will be forced to go cashless.
I think that is a very important point, because if you get given cash or if you do a job where you're paid in cash or something like that, you may have to travel miles in order to put it in your bank.
Yeah. That's the problem.
I mean, that's the next thing, is we're losing banks all over the country, and you never get to talk to the idea. Oh, look, there's our Save Our Cash campaign, Don't Kill Cash, and there's the QR code up on your screen, and you go to the camera app on your phone, point the phone's camera at that QR code, and up should come another page that will show you how to sign the petition. Or you can go, as Stephen was saying, to gbnews.com/cash.
There's 149,000 of you already have.
Brilliant. But, yeah, it's the cashless society. A lot of people are dreading it. Karen says, I've got big concerns that with banks closing all over the country... Oh, is that the one you... Yeah, that's the one you read out, sorry. Yeah. Oh, no, I wanted to read the next one, that's right. Gary says, he's very wise. I've always used our credit card for purchases, fuel, shopping, nights out, etc. I clear the balance every month, so it's a bit like using somebody else's money and leaving our money in the bank. I feel like I'm unwittingly contributing to the decline in the use of cash. You are, really. Well, you're just being clever about it.
Yeah. Bet in Dorset says, where I live, in an area with a lot of oldies, the majority of outlets take cash. This is in Dorset. I only use cards for large shops and petrol. I prefer cash because you know exactly what you're spending and what you have left.
I think that's very
There's
true.
a lot to be said for that.
If it's cash in your pocket or in your purse and you see it go down, you get the real feeling of losing your money.
Yeah.
Don't you? Spending it. Whereas it's not the same when it's just a sort of read out on an app.
No. I mean, I've had some things on the credit where the credit card bill comes and you think, what have I been spending?
How did I spend that? That can't be right. And then when you check it, it is right.
It is right.
And that really hits you like a hammer.
So you don't do that with cash. So there's a lot to be said for that. But anyway, we've also been talking about secrets on mobile phones, and would you let your partner access your mobile phone?
What would you do if you
it?
discover your partner's got 2 phones?
Amy says, my partner would never let me touch his phone, but one day he left it in the bathroom unlocked. I found dating apps, pictures and messages of him arranging to meet up with various people.
Yeah. David says, my ex-partner of 11 years had one phone for family and another locked phone for business and girlfriends to call him. Luckily now, I have just one phone and one partner.
But Phil says, I disagree with the notion that because you're in a relationship, your partner should be able to access your phone. If you think you do, it's because you might lack trust.
But Kevin says, me and my wife share a mobile phone, no PIN codes, no security at all. It's complete transparency and it makes life so much easier. If one of us is going out and needs the phone, they take it and vice versa.
Yeah. And Anton says, my wife and kids all have access to my phone. I personally believe if you're secretive about your phone, then something is not right.
No smoke without fire.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. but each to their own.
Well, yeah. I hope we're not worrying anybody about that, actually. It is something you'd worry about a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your own privacy on your own phone, and then you have to think about your partners and your children. I mean, yeah, that's another huge debate, is whether you should be able to access your children's phones.
Oh, I would say so.
It depends on the age, doesn't it?
It depends on the age, yeah. When they get to teenagers, there's some things you might not want to see.
Yeah, but you may need to see. Even more with teenagers. I wouldn't. I tell you what, I would not want to be the parent of youngsters, young kids now. It's just too much. You've got to try and keep them off all the digital devices. You're worried about them being bombarded with stuff that they shouldn't see, or being groomed or something. You're always worried about that. I don't know how you can turn the clock backwards, but I would hate to have that responsibility of bringing up children now.
No, well, you can't turn the clock backwards, can you? But I know, it was a simpler time before mobile phones.
When you used to yell at them, if you're bored, go read a book.
Yeah.
Does that happen anymore?
No, probably not. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.com. Now, let's say about the Prime Minister, should we? He's facing more pressure as the Conservative Party is likely to be hit with yet another by-election.
Yes, and of course this comes after the MP Chris Pincher is now facing an 8-week Commons suspension as an inquiry found that he had indeed groped 2 men at a club in London last year.
Well, let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Udley. Morning to you, Olivia. She's in Downing Street. Just how difficult could this be for the PM?
Well, it's a real headache for the Prime Minister. It's exactly what he doesn't need. He's already facing 3 by-elections at the end of this month, 2 MPs who have resigned, Boris Johnson and Nigel Adams, and one who's been suspended, David Warburton. He's then also expecting a 4th by-election when Nadine Dorries chooses to stand down. She's already said that she's going to resign, but she's just choosing her timing at a point that is particularly difficult for the Prime Minister, it seems. And now he's facing a 5th by-election in the form of Chris Pincher's suspension. Now, it must be said that Pincher hasn't yet been suspended. The Standards Committee has recommended an 8-week suspension from the Commons, but it'll be up to members of the House of Commons to decide on whether to agree to that suspension. It's thought that that's probably just a formality. It sounds very much as though they will agree to that suspension. And if it gets to that point, then the decision goes over to Chris Pincher's constituents in Tamworth. Now, if just 10% of them sign what's called a recall petition, then a by-election is triggered. Normally, a by-election in somewhere like Tamworth wouldn't be too much of a problem for the Conservatives because they've got a majority of 19,000 there. But right now, even that is looking pretty dicey for Rishi Sunak. The Conservatives have obviously been trailing behind in the polls consistently for a very long time now. And, of course, Pincher will be leaving the House of Commons under a very dark cloud indeed. Plus, you're going to have Labour throwing everything that they've got at this by-election. We expect to see Keir Starmer, expect to see all sorts of shadow ministers, expect to see thousands of Labour activists up in Tamworth campaigning, because it would be a huge coup for Labour to overturn that 19,000 Conservative majority. And it would start to feel very much as though all the momentum is with Labour, a situation which Rishi Sunak desperately wants to avoid.
It's a heck of a responsibility, though, for Labour, facing all of these by-elections suddenly. I mean, if it's a shock for Rishi Sunak to have them, it certainly must be a bit of a shock for Labour. Are they ready? And are other parties up to these by-elections?
Well, it'll be really interesting to find out. Yes, it is a bit of a shock for Labour. What makes things a little bit easier for Keir Starmer than for Rishi Sunak is that in 5 of the 6 by-elections, which we're now expecting in the next few months, it is Conservative MPs who've either resigned or been suspended. So the expectation, as it were, is for the Conservatives to win all of these seats. So Rishi Sunak is fighting very hard against high expectations. If you've got a Tory MP in that seat, there should be another Tory MP in that seat. But, of course, Keir Starmer is on the offensive now. Is Keir Starmer ready? I mean, he is certainly making himself out to be a Prime Minister in waiting. For the first time in the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing from shadow ministers really detailed plans about what they want to do when they're in government. And earlier in an election cycle, you normally expect opposition shadow ministers to sort of be a little bit vague about their costings. They know that they're not actually responsible for that brief, so it doesn't matter too much if a couple of million here or there aren't quite counted for. Now, though, we're hearing shadow ministers say, no, we won't be able to afford that, we will be able to afford that, etc. It very much is beginning to sound like they are waiting for government. If Keir Starmer can overturn that majority in Tamworth, that 19,000 majority, then I think it is looking pretty promising for Labour come a general election next year.
Which all falls back into the idea that, and particularly with these by-elections, but it may fall into a general election as well, the idea that it's almost whatever Labour says, people want to give the government a kicking.
Exactly. Well, there's been an argument for a long time that pretty much all Keir Starmer needs to do is sit down and keep his head down and not cause too much trouble, and then the election is sort of his to lose. Whether that will turn out to be the case as we get closer to the 2024 election is another matter. Sometimes under the pressure of the spotlight of the campaign, an opposition leader has to do a little more than just wait for the sitting party to implode. But it does seem as though Keir Starmer is really getting his ducks in a row now. And of course, what's particularly helpful to him is the slow motion implosion, if you like, of the SNP. There are 5 by-elections where Conservatives have either resigned or lost their seats, but there is also a by-election in Margaret Ferrier's seat, that SNP MP who broke the COVID regulations and has now been suspended from the Commons. And in that seat, Labour is only 5,000 votes behind the SNP. And that pattern is replicated in quite a few areas of Scotland. So if Keir Starmer can pick up a few of those really important Scottish seats, then the picture for him in England begins to get a little bit easier.
It's interesting, isn't it? So if the whole climate in politics is sort of changeable at the moment, would Rishi Sunak go for an early general election, or let things settle, try and read the room, and maybe go for an election as late as possible?
Well, absolutely. There is a lot of speculation on that at the moment. I mean, yes, there are people murmuring that there could be an early general election on the grounds that sort of Rishi Sunak doesn't want Keir Starmer to get things sorted any more than he already has. And as you say, the political atmosphere is so sort of febrile, there's no real knowing exactly what would happen in an early general election. On the other hand, there is an argument that interest rates are expected to peak sort of mid to end of this year, in sort of 3 to 6 months' time. And after that, people's mortgage rates should begin to slowly start going down. So there is an argument that the Conservatives would get a lot of flack for the very high interest rates at the moment if an election was called anytime soon. So perhaps Rishi Sunak will choose to wait it out for as long as he possibly can, which I think would actually bring us into early 2025.
Yeah, well, possibly. We shall wait and see. As always, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed, Olivia. If you've got a view on that, and I bet you have, gbviews@gbnews.com.
It does feel a bit like cards falling, but there has to be an end to that sooner or later, doesn't there? I don't know, it reminds so many people of previous governments where, gradually there's scandal after scandal after scandal and more seats.
That's what they thought in 1992, wasn't it? And then the Tories won again.
Unsurprisingly, yes. Because of the lack of opposition, really. But you could argue that Keir Starmer is at least presenting a better opposition at the moment, although it's not convincing to all. No, it certainly isn't. And we're talking to a shadow minister a little bit later on. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening at 14 minutes past 7. A man handcuffed himself to the gates of Buckingham Palace yesterday afternoon. The Met Police says he also threatened to harm himself, and the London ambulance was called to the scene too. He was later detained under the Mental Health Act.
The Parliamentary Committee report says the government still doesn't know what it wants to achieve with the HS2 station at Euston. You might say that's fair enough, but it spent 8 years planning and designing it, though that work has been suspended at the moment because the government says it is still committed to delivering the project in a cost-effective way.
New research shows that around half of people over 50 who left work during the pandemic have had to cut back on their food shopping by £60 a week. The study also suggested 48% of people who retired in 2020 to 21 are now living in relative poverty. Well, there's thinking of people and how they behaved during the pandemic and what's happening to them now. There's a lovely story in today's Express about a married couple who were just together during the pandemic, and they just ate and ate and ate, and they put on an amazing amount of weight. I mean, they piled it on. But since the pandemic, they have been...
Oh, here we go.
They have been slimming. And look at it, it's just one of those pictures, you know, when you see pictures of people who've lost a lot of weight, they always get them to hold their old trousers up. But that's the couple, and you can see from the picture how much weight they've lost. I'll turn it round and read it in a minute for you. Have we managed to get a close-up of that? No?
Oh, there you go.
There. You can see them holding up their trousers. Their trousers are twice the size of them, at least.
Dear me.
Yeah. So they put
John
on...
and Joe.
Yeah, they put on a huge amount of weight during the pandemic. Since the pandemic, they've had to go on a diet. And it's just a sort of, you know, sensible diet, just watching nothing fatty.
They're very trim. John's 50, I can see. Very trim now.
Yeah?
Mind you, he's wearing an awful pink suit. Sorry, John, that's dreadful.
Well, he probably loves it.
Maybe.
It's his summer suit.
Well,
And she's wearing a gorgeous dress.
Yeah.
Can you read where they're from? So I'm having to hold it up so I can't.
You are John Durkin. They weighed 40 stone between them, and they've swapped supermarket meals and takeaways for healthy home-cooked options. They're from Burnley. Oh, good old Burnley.
Lancashire. Yeah.
There you go.
Lovely. But well done there.
Slimming world.
Well done. But you see, that just shows that some people during the pandemic, they obviously enjoyed... Oh, I see what you mean about the suit. Yeah, they probably just enjoyed being at home and cooking and eating and all the rest of it. But then realised by the end of the pandemic they'd put on so much weight.
Yeah, well, at least they've been able to shift it.
Yes.
Good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done, you.
Keeping it off now.
Well, absolutely, and that is almost the hardest thing, isn't it?
It is. Well, let's hope they stick to it. John, if you're spending a lot of time at home, Michael says, my wife and I moved into our new build home with an energy performance rating of A, 96 out of 100, 12 solar panels, a 10-kilowatt battery, and our electricity and gas bills have plummeted. I don't understand why the government haven't dictated that all new builds must have solar energy built in to help with net zero targets.
Absolutely. It would be such a sensible thing to require.
Energy efficiency, isn't it? And security.
Yeah.
As well, individual energy security.
Talking about the need to build so many more homes, but those homes should be sensibly eco-efficient.
Oh, it's just crazy not to. But anyway, doesn't seem to be enforced at the moment. I'm sure it'll come into play at some point.
Now, it's an important day today because 4 boys, you'll remember this, who tragically lost their lives after falling through ice on a lake in Solihull back in December. Well, there's a preliminary hearing. No, in fact, it's the last day, isn't it, of the inquest, because there was already a preliminary hearing, hearing that they died from the effect of drowning. And today, the inquest into their deaths is set to conclude at Birmingham Coroner's Court.
Yeah, our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, reminds us now of what happened last December.
A tragedy that shook a community. On the 11th of December last year, brothers 6-year-old Samuel and 8-year-old Finley Butler and their 11-year-old cousin Thomas Stewart were playing on a frozen lake in Solihull when they fell through the ice and got stuck. 10-year-old Jack Johnson, who had seen the 3 struggling in the water, heroically jumped in to help. Emergency services were first called to the scene when members of the public and police officers initially went into the water to try and get the youngsters out. One police officer, so desperate to help the boys, was seen punching through the ice. The children were rescued by specialist water rescue trained firefighters, where they were given immediate life support and rushed to hospital in a critical condition. The next day, West Midlands Police and West Midlands Fire Service revealed the news the community had been dreading.
We are deeply saddened by the death of 3 boys who were rescued by our firefighters yesterday here at the lake in Solihull. The boys' deaths are a tragedy beyond words, and the thoughts and heartfelt sympathies of everyone here at West Midlands Fire Service are with their families, friends and the wider communities at this distressing time. Frozen lakes, ponds, canals and reservoirs can look picturesque, but they can be lethal, and there are no greater warnings of this than yesterday's tragic events.
2 days later, 6-year-old Samuel had died in hospital, and all 4 children involved had now sadly passed away. As the news was confirmed, Kingshurst mourned the Babs Mill boys with flowers, teddy bears and tributes.
I'm not surprised to see this. I'm saddened to see it because, you know, I wish it never ever happened and we'd still got the kids with us, but, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't know the children. But they're Kingshurst children. That's what makes the difference. You can feel the sadness in the air. As soon as you walk anywhere in King's House, people are just
Sad.
in bits.
Everyone that's got kids can really relate to what we feel broken as a community, and there's just a feeling that we all want to help and just show that we care, really.
Senior coroner for Birmingham and Solihull, Louise Hunt, described the circumstances as a devastating tragedy and allowed all 4 to be buried without a post-mortem to preserve the dignity and respect of each little boy. Jack Carson, GB News.
Oh, it's just terrible. Just terrible.
You can only hope it brings some sort of help to the families to have the inquest concluded, to close that stage.
Yeah, but when you see their little faces, you just can't get over the tragedy, can you?
No.
And we're going to learn that more, I suppose, from the car crash that happened in Wimbledon yesterday, killing a little girl, but apparently injuring others really badly.
And we've no idea what happened with that at all.
No idea what could possibly have happened to it, except the grief etched on the faces of even the sort of fairly hardened police people outside. You can see how terrible and devastated the whole school is, the whole community. We have yet to learn about what happened there.
I know. Now, loads of you getting in touch about cash this morning, all down to our GB News Don't Kill Cash campaign. It really is gaining momentum, and the breaking news is we've hit more than 150,000 signatures.
Yeah, and that's following us just talking about it today. I think the numbers have gone right up. If you want to get involved, grab your phone to scan. And if you don't know, because I didn't know earlier, you put your phone in camera mode and then you point the camera at that, in the middle there, the QR code. If you do that, up will come a page inviting you how and telling you how to sign the petition. Otherwise, you can go to gbnews.com/cash.
All about just making sure, just put something in place so that, you know, we keep hold of cash. Can't just be ruled out completely. I know a lot of us don't use cash very much. I don't use cash very much.
No, I do.
But it's about protecting those people who still want to use cash and aren't comfortable with the digital spend.
Is it all a big conspiracy by the banks? They just the less we use cash, the more they can just leave the high street completely and do everything on the computer.
Well,
but it's not quite the same, is it? I mean, I miss very badly not being able to go in and talk reasonably to somebody behind the counter in a bank. If you want to reason with them about anything, or you just want to ask about something, you can't do that now. You have to do it all by messaging digitally. But also, I just think banks should be there.
Yeah, you need someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Mind you, when you go to a bank now, last time I mean, I don't go very often, but last time I went into a bank, you didn't go to the cashiers at all. They're empty. It's totally empty. But they've now got the machines where you can pay in, pay out, the whole shebang.
You can't pay in cash through digitally, though, can you? I mean, I know there are some where you can put a note in.
What, in the machines?
Yeah.
No, you can pay cash in.
But not coins.
No, not coins.
So it'd have to be a tenner or a fiver at least, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? And then you hear that there are great big moves about eradicating the fiver.
Oh, is there?
Oh, yeah, there have always been rumours that they want to get rid of the fiver.
Oh.
It's a conspiracy to get us to spend more.
Anyway, just scan that QR code and have your say. And you might want your say about the sport, because Paul Coyte's got everything you need to know coming up very shortly. This is GB News.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon and plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of Hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
"7:29 morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen, Anne and Paul Coit, who joins us this morning.
Welcome. Good morning, how are you?
We're all right, very pleased to see you.
Good. I was at Wimbledon yesterday.
Oh, yeah, how did you get on?
Lucky thing.
It was great, but the thing is, Andy Murray was on so late because
Didn't come on
Tsitsipas...
till 7:30, by which time I thought, I love Andy Murray, but I can't stay up any later.
Well, how do you think I felt? I knew I was coming in here, and I'm thinking, this is what I've been looking forward to this for a year.
So you had to leave?
Well, I did, and I feel so bad for it. And I'm thinking, well, so he's lost the first set, and I'm thinking it's not looking so good for Andy. How are we going to go with this? And then I'm thinking Tsitsipas is going to win. I can just see.
We all felt
he
that.
looks so good. Surely now, after all these years, whereas Andy's put us through the ringer, hasn't he? And we think after once, and then he'd come back and think, now it's not going to happen now.
And we
he's done
just
it
seen the
again.
shot there. He appeared to have a terrible sort of injury. He really hurt himself, and he fell to the ground, clutching his groin. You thought, oh no, here we go.
That was when he yelled, didn't he? And then he yelled out in pain and thinking, well, then straight after that, he goes and wins 11 points pretty much on the bounce.
Yeah. Well, you and I missed this, but apparently he went on to be brilliant.
I heard about this as I was walking to Southfield Station.
Oh,
so
nice.
as I'm walking along and checking, thinking, why does this always happen?
Yeah.
But it was, honestly, it was a real thing, because I did see the Liam Brody game, and which was unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean, he was
Brody
absolutely...
versus Ruud.
Yes, Casper Ruud.
Brody turned out to be absolutely brilliant.
He really
It was
did.
so close all the way. The funny thing is that their scores were so close all the way. I'm sorry, I love this.
Oh, no.
Their scores were so close all the way, but it was very difficult to tell which was which.
Yes.
If you're just... Because they look almost identical.
It didn't help the fact that they were dressed in white, and also they both went, because I know Stephen wears one of these, was the headband, you know, where you do the tie thing at the back, and let that try, you know, that's... Just go with another headband. And I'm looking at Brody's hair, and I'm thinking... He doesn't need a headband, does he?
No.
He doesn't need. He hasn't got the Tsitsipas locks
No,
there.
but sometimes you just like to put one on, Paul.
Is it purely for look? Is it purely for look?
Is he's a star. He's going to be a big star, Brody.
He really is.
Because he won in the end, and he did a lovely interview, and he showed he's got a real sense of humour, real star quality.
Talked about his mum. He comes from Rochdale, doesn't he? He talked about his mum, and he was saying that, you know, he was, what about your mum? And he goes, well, you know, I've won 80 grand here, so, you know. But the thing is, when it comes to being a tennis player on the tour, the amount of professional tennis players that play in these big tournaments don't make big money. It's only the big names that are making the fortunes, because they have to pay to enter. So Liam Brody, for example, he doesn't have a house, he doesn't have a car, he never goes on holiday. Yes, he made 80 grand, he's going to make more than that, but he's got a team of 3, so he has to pay them as well. He has to pay for travel, so he's the boss. So it's not literally just go up, turn up, make loads of money and have a great life. It's a really tricky life. So if you're like down from 50 in the world downwards, each time you're going into these tournaments, it's a gamble, because you're paying to enter, and then you've got to make your money back.
And as he said that the family support them. He said his mum's making his tea tonight.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Bless him.
They're not going out.
Now, what's this about a bagel?
Well, there was a bagel in the last set. Was a bagel.
What's that mean?
Well, it's in a tennis term when it comes to scores. 6-love is a bagel, because the 0, that's what it looks like, the bagel. I know it sounds crazy, 0 being, because it could be any other sport where you get a 0 or a 0, but that's what you would call a set that is a bagel if you manage to beat someone 6-love, which Liam Brody did in that last set against Casper Ruud. And did you know, there's also a breadstick as well. There's a breadstick.
What's the breadstick?
Well, 6-1.
Oh.
The breadstick is not as well known as the bagel, but I'm hoping to push a pretzel through for 6-3. But I don't know whether that's going to go. I don't know what's going to pick up. It's just something I'm trying to work out.
You never know. That might pick up, actually.
Well,
I'm going to throw it into all my conversations and sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you were lost on a pretzel.
I was walking. That's what I was doing. I was just walking around Wimbledon yesterday, yelling at the top of my voice, pretzel over there, and then if you do it with enough confidence and there's enough tennis people around, they go, oh, I know what that is. And you go, yeah.
We ought to add, actually, just for those who didn't know, that Andy Murray had to stop play at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Because that's what you have to do at Wimbledon now. You can't play below.
See what do you make on that? See, it's 11 o'clock, it's Merton Council. So in the Australian Open, they play till ridiculous hours, you know, and that goes on till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, Wimbledon, of course, it's the when it came to that game, it was the only game that was still left on at Wimbledon. The roof is closed, it's under the lights, there's 15,000 people in there, and everybody wants to see it go on, and it was suiting Andy Murray to continue. But down to these council laws, and because of people that I suppose live around, it's 2 weeks a year. Don't you think they can't just...
Most of them are renting out their houses
Of course, you know what? That's a good point, because most of them are. They're making a fortune. So everybody living around the area is not actually... They're not residents, because they're probably in Barbados at the moment.
So do we know...
But if the council person could have walked on and said, right,
Yeah.
Time now.
Yeah, you can sit with his cap on like Derek Geiler.
You could have
the
gone.
electricity.
Yeah,
You have no authority here.
Yes, excuse me, Merton Couch, I don't care if this is the biggest tournament in the world. The lights are going off. So he'll be on this afternoon now, Andy, so he's going to come back out this afternoon.
It's not like they'll make him come on at 11.
No.
Wait, right. But
So
he'll be
I
first
think he'll be second. I believe it to be second on. So it'll be 3 o'clock. The other one is Katie Boulter. We should mention Katie Boulter as well. British #1. She beat Victoria Tomova. There was a bagel.
Oh, well.
Bagel in the first round. 3-6. Pretzel and another 6-3. So she came through, but she is going to play Rybakina, who played yesterday, who is the current champion, and she's through. So that's going to be a very tricky game for her.
Right. A quick word about the Ashes, Paul.
Oh goodness me, what a day at Headingley it was yesterday. So Mark Wood, here comes another phrase for you. He got his fifer.
Excellent.
Which is the 5 wickets, so they call that the fifer. So that's probably better known than the bagel. But now England's fastest bowler ever, 96.5 miles an hour, the fastest ball delivered by an Englishman. Wow. The fastest ever, by the way, is 100 miles an hour, which is Shoaib Akhtar from Pakistan. But Mark Wood says,
it's pretty amazing.
It is. I know I'm going to do a quick aside, but what do you think the fastest ball travelling in what sport that would be?
Tennis.
No.
Snooker.
Snooker, no. It's golf. We're looking about 200 miles an hour.
Wow, really?
And the fastest one in a game where they play is pelota, which is that Spanish game, where they have like the basket. Have you ever seen that? And it's like a curved basket. Yeah. We're looking about 170 miles an hour for that. So that's probably the fastest ball that could go. They're really hard balls as well. So you don't want to be hit by one of those. No. So anyway, back to the cricket. Mitchell Marsh, a fantastic 100 he scored. It's in the balance. We've dropped some catches, but it was good to see Johnny Bairstow taking the mickey out of the Australians, because when he got stumped out and we had the big international incident, every time he went up to the crease, he just put his bat in there and let them know that he wasn't stepping out of it this time.
Right.
So that carries on today.
Lovely. We're catching you a little bit later, aren't we?
I've worked on. I'm looking for more bread-related scores.
Oh no, excellent.
Well,
excellent.
I mean, the summer is meant to be silly when it comes to news, but when it comes to sport comes into its own in the summer.
It does. Of course it does.
And then what could we have in the next one? A crumpet.
Yeah, crumpet, yes. Oh, it's 6-4. Oh, it's a crumpet.
It's a crumpet.
Yes.
That's what I want. I want a crumpet.
There you go.
I love a crumpet.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Now, coming up, we're going to bring you all the stories in the newspapers. This is Breakfast on GB News. Welcome back. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Just to tell you, the Don't Kill Cash campaign is gaining momentum. The petition now has more than 152,000 signatures. That's since Monday. And if you want to join, just, well, you can either go to gbnews.com/cash, or if you can't be bothered to type, there's a QR code on your screen right now. Just open your camera app on your phone and hold it up to that, and it'll take you to a web page. I'm being laughed at by Emma Burnell. I don't know why.
It just strikes me as odd that the point of Don't Kill Cash is so that you can maintain your data, and then you go and use a QR code to get onto the website to sign up to it. Just it strikes me as slightly odd.
Yeah, but how else do you do it? How else do you do it? We can't send letters to everybody.
That's true.
But actually, the point of Don't Kill Cash isn't just about, you know, the idea that the more digital we go, the more we give away our data, although that is one aspect. I think it's just about the fact that we like to have post offices and banks in our high street, and there are things that you like to have cash for.
But I'm a terrible hypocrite, because I really don't want to kill cash. I think it's really important that we don't do it, but I...
Don't use cash.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely support the value of keeping as many different types of this as possible, but I can't remember the last time I went to a cash point.
It's very hard to find cash points now. They're increasingly hard to find in London.
Well, particularly in villages. This is actually a really serious point. There have been a lot of really good campaigns actually to try and get cash points into villages, because if you can't get to one in walking distance, there really are things that you're quite cut off from.
I've got one really, really near to me in a village, and it's always incredibly popular.
Yeah.
It's caused... I think people drive for miles around, park their car outside it and use the cash machine a lot.
Well, if you're a cash user or not, it's about freedom of choice, isn't it? So that you can use cash if you want to. gbnews.com/cash and have your say on that one. Let's go through the papers then with Freddie Gray from The Spectator and the political journalist Emma Burnell. Emma, let's have a look at the Eye, should we? Front page of the Eye. An asylum centre. The Home Office has painted over a mural for children.
Yeah, this is a centre where children live, and the Home Office have done what the Home Office does and made themselves look like, I mean, literally cartoon villains. They are... There are lots and lots of debates to be had about how we deal with asylum and immigration, but if you want to make yourself look like the worst type of stereotype that the Liberal left will paint you out as, then paint over a mural in a children's asylum centre. It's just... It's kind of...
So this is an asylum centre that particularly takes children?
Yeah. The idea is this is supposed to make them feel a little safer, a little more comforting. Yeah. It was Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is known everywhere. It's, you know, it's like Coca-Cola, one of those international symbols. So the children would feel... And apparently that was too welcoming to those children.
No, there's got to be another reason for this.
That's the reason that was in the official... That's the language that was in the official order.
It may have been a legal problem, because Disney are quite fierce on that. Unless you get the clearance to use Mickey Mouse, you will not get...
Well, let's all worry about that.
No, that's the real problem.
Maybe those child asylum seekers would actually report us to Disney. Gosh.
I don't know, it seems very odd.
It seems very, very odd. It feels like grandstanding and, as I say, there are debates to be had around the asylum and migration system, but if you want to look like the worst kind of stereotype of that end of the debate, this is the way to go about it. And I do wonder if it's just because it seems to have come directly from Robert Jenrick. And I think he was kind of seen as quite bland previously. His nickname was Robert Generic, which I know from listening to the Spectator podcast. Thank you, Freddie. And I think maybe he's trying to sort of push himself further into the kind of Suella Braverman, Priti Patel model of Home Office minister.
Oh, I don't know. I think we could probably do with an answer or two on that one.
I think we need to know more, don't we? Where are you?
Cameras all over the shop. Hello, good evening. Freddie, let's have a look at The Guardian, should we?
Yes.
Going back in time, a long time, to the war.
Yes. Well, so Patrick Winter, who's the diplomatic editor of The Guardian, very, very good journalist, has this story, which is Germany failed to listen to warnings on Russia. And this is a story that has been a bit in the last couple of years, that Germany has sort of had a moment of reckoning with how it's behaved towards Russia in the last few years.
It seemed very... I mean, Germany and France, actually, both seem to behave very strangely.
Well, I think they were more willing to work with Putin than Britain were. And there's a new German foreign minister.
What year are we talking about?
We're talking about in the last 5 to 10 years. So the new foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, has given this interview to Patrick Winter in which he said, we got it wrong. We didn't understand the threat of Russia. And we indulged in checkbook diplomacy, which I think speaks.
So they just did deals that benefited them.
They just did deals for energy, which I think is fair enough in foreign policy. But I think
who was warning them?
The West, America,
and other Eastern European countries
America,
as well.
NATO. Yeah.
It seems very odd that, mind you. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? That's the.
Well, a lot of the German government were then went on and worked for Gazprom afterwards. It was obviously everyone was getting very rich, and it's obviously been a bit of a disaster because we now have a major land war in Europe.
Yeah, we do. Let's should we change tack a little bit and go for a bit of wrinkly rock?
Absolutely.
This is in the Mirror, Emma.
So the Mirror is kind of splashing on how many of the classic term ageing rock stars are still absolutely filling stadiums. Rod Stewart's playing, I think, tonight and tomorrow to giant audiences. Bruce Springsteen's playing this summer.
Bruce doesn't look that wrinkly to be. He seems pretty good.
He's 73, but you absolutely still would, wouldn't you? He's lovely looking.
Yes, probably.
Speak for yourself there, Emma.
Elton, of course.
Elton John, of course, absolutely.
His tour, which he's still sort of embarking on, he's already sold £707 million worth of tickets.
But I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. When he came out of retirement, I saw Leonard Cohen, and he was 70.
Oh, that was cheery.
Everyone says this. It was very funny. And he actually opened. This is where he came bounded on stage. And he said, last time I was in London 14 years ago, I was just a 60-year-old kid with a dream.
Oh, it's nice. It's Ringo Starr's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday, Ringo.
Guess how old he is?
82.
83.
Oh, well, that was
Happy birthday, Ringo.
That was a very good guess.
That's not bad, was it? Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm not just a pretty face.
I would have gone for 70 or something. I would have been way.
Would you?
Oh, no, the Beatles are older than that.
I always think about where my parents are and how old they probably were when they first started listening to the Beatles, so that's how I kind of get to somewhere close.
Yeah.
You always have to think Paul is definitely 80 plus. We know that, don't we? It ages them all.
Well, and they're all still going, and that's wonderful.
I know.
Good on them. Good on them. Freddie, since we last saw you, have you been downloading Threads onto your mobile device?
I almost did it in the hour, but no, I haven't done it yet. I'm resisting Threads. But Threads are apparently... Twitter is apparently going to sue Threads. One of the senior executives, not Elon Musk, but a senior executive at Twitter has said it's a blatant rip-off, and we're considering legal action.
Is it a blatant rip-off?
Well, I don't know what. It's very similar.
It is very similar.
But how much of it is copyrighted or whatever you do, or patented?
And that's what Mark Zuckerberg's done. He's always just seen what's working, imitated it, and it works
Made it
better
better
for him. Yeah.
Yes, often made it better.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that.
But can I ask, as you're all Threads users, are the conversations happening?
Oh, yes.
Just posting into the ether?
No.
So far, it is actually. I've only done, I think, 2 threads or whatever they call them, non-tweets. But each one has had responses and likes and things, so it is ongoing.
But are there disagreements? Because the reason Twitter worked, even though Twitter's vile and everybody hates it for all the right reasons, but the reason people were hooked on it is because there was a lot of political disagreement.
Oh, well, it's not got to that point yet. It's only been going a day.
It's still very nice at the moment.
Because there was a lot of sort of replica Twitters on the political right in America. They launched quite a few of them.
Truth.
And then they just became echo chambers. Everybody's saying the same thing over and over again. And what you need, what makes Twitter work, is people actually disagree.
Yeah, at the minute it's just people saying, "Oh, I've joined Threads," and that's it. But it will. It will develop into something
what
like
happened
that.
to Donald Trump's own social media platform?
Truth Social still exists.
It actually has quite a few users. They may all be bots.
Well, or they're probably just devoted Trump supporters.
Bots and MAGAs.
But, I mean, millions of users.
Yeah. Right, we've got to leave it there, you two.
I didn't get to talk about Taylor Swift.
Oh, no.
maybe
next time.
Yes.
Next time, yes.
Control yourself.
Tell us all about
Control yourself. Now, TV presenter Fiona Phillips, who's recently been, well, actually, it was about a year ago, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, she's on trials for a new drug which could reverse or slow the illness by removing a certain protein from the brain.
Yeah, people with Alzheimer's who take part in clinical trials tend to have better outcomes. That's according to a professor at University College London.
Well, let's talk to Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. Good to see you, as always, Frankie. I mean, what do we make of all these new trials? I mean, it gets publicity because of someone like Fiona Phillips being involved in this, but how much progress are these trials making?
So clinical trials is a really exciting field. I actually work in clinical trials, but cancer ones myself. And honestly, I can't speak highly enough about the opportunities they give. The stats that you quoted there about how patients tend to do better is actually true. Trials give access to new treatments that are in the pipeline. So every existing drug that we give has had to go through this trial process. And also patients get a lot of surveillance on a trial, so they get regular follow-up with a clinician and specialists in the field. With this particular trial, it's still in the early phases, so it's an early phase 2B trial. It is randomised, which is excellent, and it is going on. I think they've got 43 patients in this country, but patients are still on it, so we don't have the results of it yet. When the trial reads out in the next couple of years, we'll know more about whether the drug's effective at slowing down the progression of Alzheimer's and indeed reversing some of the symptoms, and if it's safe and tolerable for patients. What I think's really important is that investment and research is happening in this space. There's been quite a long lag in research in the Alzheimer's space. Working in cancer trials, we have new trials popping up all the time. But if you look at the Alzheimer's timeline, there was a kind of 20-year lag with no new treatments. So I think this is really promising.
Yeah, I mean, Fiona has to be credited with so much of the marvellous work she's done campaigning about Alzheimer's, because both her parents, I think her uncle as well, many members of her family have been haunted by this horrible disease, and now she's clearly got it herself. And she doesn't appear, as far as we know, she doesn't know whether she's on the drug or on the placebo. She's praying that she's on the drug, but even obviously all of the specialists she speaks to, they don't know how successful this will be. But are you saying that the sheer fact that you're on a trial, your outcome is likely to be better, even if you're on the placebo?
Yeah, there's some thought that, so in this trial, just for people watching, the patients are randomly allocated to either receive the drug or a dummy drug, which is a placebo, and they don't know which one they're getting, so it's administered in the same way. Both the patients and the clinicians are not sure, and that ensures that we reduce bias in trials. But the actual process of a trial means that you've got regular follow-up in a hospital, you have lots of regular tests, and patients on trials become really good at, being aware of their health, reporting all of the symptoms or side effects they've got, and in general, improving lifestyle factors, because they are wanting to do everything they can to improve their outcome. So in general, it's all that patients on trials do better regardless of which drug they receive. Obviously, we hope that the patients who get the trial drug do better, because that shows that the drug's effective.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Frankie, we've got to leave it there, a bit tight for time. Thanks very much indeed. More on that, of course, throughout the course of the day, and all your top stories in a moment. First, though, here's your weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon, and plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of July. Today, more pressure on the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak could face a fifth by-election after the MP Chris Pincher was suspended for 8 weeks.
The Wimbledon school community is in shock still after an 8-year-old girl was killed by a car colliding with a school's end-of-term tea party in South London yesterday.
Inquests into the deaths of 4 boys who died after falling through ice on a frozen lake will be concluded later. We'll look back at what happened that day last December.
And homeowners may have to spend almost £14,000 on improving energy efficiency measures. The consumer champion Will Hodson will be joining us later to explain how you can do something about it.
And of course, we'll tell you what the weather's going to be like this weekend.
It's a damp start for some, but many will be very warm and sunny today. The weekend promises some big thunderstorms, however. Join me later for a full GB News weather forecast.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, I'll tell you what, don't kill cash is really getting going. And some really interesting points, actually, that are, as someone who doesn't really use cash, I hadn't really thought of. Fiona in Brighton says, children's pocket money is an issue with no cash. And Heather says, I give my grandchildren a little bit of pocket money. They like to go and spend it in the shops. It's important they learn what they can get for £1 or so.
Yeah, but you know, there are those apps, aren't there, for children, where you can pay into their app, and that's how you pay them money.
Yeah, but it is still...
That's how you do.
But it's not that, again, that's not quite the same as a child, as getting... We used to get 20p. But, you know,
Yeah,
actually getting that coin in your pocket.
But maybe you're preparing them for a digital age. Yeah. If you're basically putting credit into their little app, and then they can go with their mobile phone to the corner shop and buy a quarter of jelly beans.
Pauline says charities will miss out on coin donations. And charities, I think it's a big issue for charities and for homeless people. You know, I feel awful. I get, you know, particularly when I come into London for work, and you're always stopped by people. And I don't have any cash. I'm really sorry, I haven't got any cash.
I think Pamela makes a good point. She said if cash disappears, then there's going to be a rise in debt because people don't keep a check on their spending. I check my bank accounts every day and keep a small amount of cash at home. Cashless is a throwback to the pandemic. Well, it sort of is. But I agree with you. It's much easier to spend digital money than it is to spend the pound in your pocket, isn't it?
Well, if you want to help save cash, there's the QR code on your screen now. You can just open the camera on your mobile phone and just hover above it, and it should take you to the webpage, gbnews.com/cash. And already, let me tell you, it was 147,000 when we went on air this morning, and we are now up to 154,445.
Doesn't cost you anything. You're just signing a petition just to show the strength of feeling, and that's important.
Yeah, so there you go. It's interesting how much of a reaction there has been to that one this morning. Keep your thoughts coming through on that. GBviews at gbnews.com. But let's turn our attention to number 10. Because Rishi Sunak is facing more pressure as the Conservative Party is more than likely now to be hit with another by-election.
Yes, it comes after MP Chris Pincher is now facing an 8-week Commons suspension, possibly, as an inquiry has found that he groped 2 men at a club in London last year.
Let's talk to former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, who's here in the studio. Good morning to you. So this has all got to go through the Commons. It should sail through. There's likely to be a recall notice, you would imagine. 19,000 majority for Chris Pincher, though, at the moment.
Means nothing.
Really? Has it got to that stage?
Yeah, I think it means absolutely nothing. I think the Tories, any by-election that comes up now, the Tories are likely to lose. It would be a pretty safe bet. And we've been here before, don't forget, because 1997, the Tories lost more than half of their members of Parliament. And you have to ask yourself, you know, what they say, history, who said it, you'll know, because you know these things. History repeats itself first as a tragedy and second as a farce. So we had the tragedy when a perfectly good government under John Major was condemned for decisions that had been made about the exchange rate mechanism 4 years before. Now we have the farce, and it is a farce. You know, that a man like Chris Pincher, who was known to be a pretty desperate character in his personal life, is put by Boris, I mean, it's almost risible, in charge of party discipline. And the worrying thing is what is Sunak doing about it? Because, it seems not a lot.
Well, I mean, what can he do at the moment? As you said yourself, it looks as though every by-election will probably be lost. And the prediction for a general election, there just isn't enough time to turn things around. So what else can he do at the moment except preside over what looks like a falling house of cards?
What he has to do is to lose with grace and dignity and keep the Conservative Party up there. So, when Labour come in, and, I would obviously believe from my perspective, don't make a very good fist of it, there is a Conservative Party ready and waiting to come back. But when you look at the situation, if one was a strong grassroots Conservative voter, what is the incentive to vote Conservative? And here I think, I've always been rather a supporter of Rishi Sunak's because he's intelligent, puts him one up on quite a lot of them, and he is very good at the economics and so on. But what he isn't is a leader. I'm full of old jokes today. Let's have another one.
Yeah, go on.
He's one of those people who thinks charisma's December the 25th.
Yeah. But then, I mean, you could say the same thing about Keir Starmer, couldn't you?
Exactly.
I mean,
but
a
I would
fine
say
man, sort of thing, in many respects, with a good, solid career behind him, but he's not charismatic.
But that is why the Conservative Party would have a chance if, A, they were led by somebody who was more charismatic, and secondly, we didn't have the problem of Boris Johnson. I mean, all this stuff, everyone who claims to know about these things fills my head with preposterous ideas, like, for instance, Nigel Farage of this parish joining up with Boris and running together at the election. One of the things that is quite clear is that the inheritance from Boris Johnson has been deeply tainted, and a far more accomplished politician than Rishi Sunak would have had trouble dealing with it. But even more troubling, I think, is that Boris has no loyalty. He has loyalty to one person, and when he picks up the mirror and looks in it, you know who that person is. But he doesn't want, apparently, to rally round and try and help the Conservative Party. He accepts no responsibility for the shambles into which the party had fallen by the end of his time. And he is there, ready to make problems of a kind that, if you said, I mean, I'm normally an optimist, but I think this is the time for pessimists, people who put prunes on their all brand, because you absolutely cannot believe that the Conservative Party can recover from this, even though Keir Starmer, although, as you say, a worthy guy, helps old ladies across roads, kind to animals, but he isn't, when we lost in 1997, we lost to a party led by a man, Tony Blair, who was and remains a very charismatic person who managed to live down all the fears that the public had about what a Labour government would mean.
So you have to ask, don't you, if, as many commentators in Conservative, usually newspapers, are saying, we're going to lose the next election, there's no doubt about it. If you conclude that, you have to then worry, don't you, about who will win or whether there will be a proper win. And who's going to take over?
Well, this is it. And, the country needs firm leadership. And I think a lot of people, including sensible commentators, are despairing about whether the Conservative Party can pull itself together. You see, the thing is, a party's got to give some pretence of actually liking each other and being prepared to work together in the common good. The Tory Party don't like each other. It's almost impossible to believe that the Tory Party are a united entity, Again, I'm full of old jokes today. It keeps me happy when life is not good, A pollster comes up to a chap and says, are you a supporter of an organised political party? He says, no, I'm a Conservative.
Oh.
Is that how bad it is? Because the problem with that is, right, if you look at what the Labour Party has to do to win the next election, which would seem at the minute do nothing and say nothing, and they just walk into it, then how does that it's almost like the Tories in opposition, isn't it? You've still got to keep the Labour Party in check, like the Labour Party's meant to keep the Tories in check. But it seems like the Labour Party could propose anything and they'd still get in.
Yes, and the point is nobody much cares what the Labour Party are proposing. It's all focuses on the Tories. And, you know, it comes back to what happened in 1997 when John Major ran for re-election within the party and beat Heseltine. It would have been much better, actually, if Heseltine had won, because Heseltine would have reduced the amount by... He wasn't going to win the election, but he would have reduced the amount by which Labour won. And it was not good for anybody, not least the Labour Party, that they won so easily. And I think that, you know, unless Sunak discovers a new authority, this is what he lacks, the authority of a leader who believes in what he's trying to do and can project it to the public. But a lot will turn on how big a majority Labour get. Because let's be quite clear, if Labour do win, there'll be some pretty wild and woolly people coming in. And don't let's be too taken in by all this moderation stuff. And let's not believe that Keir Starmer is actually going to be capable of keeping them going. Because don't forget, Keir Starmer was one of the most prominent spokesmen for Labour at the last election when they were led by Jeremy Corbyn, who's no longer a member of the party.
What's the gossip on David Miliband? It was so strong, probably about 6 months, a year ago, saying he's going to come in, he's going to come back from the States, and he is the charismatic leader we need. But everything's suddenly gone quiet.
I know. He's the king over the water. And kings over the water generally either stay over the water or, when they try and get back across the water, come to a sticky end.
That's probably what he's concluded.
Of course. Would you do it? You know.
Well, I can't understand why anyone would want any of these jobs at the moment.
I know. I mean, to be an ex-politician is probably quite a good thing, as against being a current one. I console myself with that thought.
What we are seeing, though, from the Labour Party is some clearer policy coming out now, which would seem to suggest, because I've always been critical of the fact they say we need a general election now, but they haven't got any policies.
Exactly.
Well, they're coming out with policies now.
Yeah.
I mean, are they trying to position themselves? Does it look like they are a government in waiting?
Well, they have to. That's what they have to do. They will have to bring out some policies, and obviously, what they will be trying to show is that the country is safe with Labour, new moderate Labour, and what I can't see is any way in which Sunak can now pull it round. A different sort of personality might have been able to. And I've always, by the way, been a supporter of Sunak's because, you know, he has experience of the financial world, and he is he is a good person in terms of the quality of his mind. But I just think he's been dealt such a hand of cards, it's almost impossible to find a winning hand amongst them.
I mean, the sense, I guess, that we've got, you know, number 10 and number 11 may be filled with competent people, but they are both on the bland side.
Yes, and also... Yeah,
I mean, which sounds horribly personal, actually. It's not about being personal,
politics
is it? It's about politics.
Politics is about... But, you see, Jeremy Hunt, I've always had a lot of regard for because he stuck with that. You know, I mean, of all the jobs I did in government, being Minister for Health was the worst of them because it was a simply hopeless situation. And Jeremy Hunt actually stuck around as Secretary of State for Health and did a seriously good job. Problem that Jeremy Hunt has is that he hasn't spent a single millisecond in the Treasury before he became Chancellor. It doesn't give him much of a chance. When I think, you know, I obviously was thinking quite a lot recently of Nigel Lawson, who was my first boss, Department of Energy. And the thing about Nigel was he knew it all backwards, forwards, sideways. It didn't mean he got everything right, but what it meant was he had the assurance to take on his civil servants. And there are times in the Treasury where you've simply got to take them on. And when you think what he did, taking down the top rate of tax at a stroke, to recall that happy phrase, from 60% to 40%, and getting more money the first year it was 40% than he got the last year it was 60%. That requires A, boldness, but B, knowledge and confidence based on years of having been involved in the financial sector. And Sunak just doesn't have that, and nor does Hunt.
Well, I was thinking, wouldn't the Tories then be better off if Jeremy Hunt were Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak was still Chancellor?
Well,
better suited to those jobs?
I think one can... Look, the answer is there a compelling reason to vote Conservative, whether it's Hunt or whether it's Sunak? I don't know of one, sadly, except they're not Labour, and that isn't as potent a weapon as it used to be.
OK. David, on that note...
Bleak note.
Better leave it there.
I should go off and have a good cry.
Yes, you should do.
Yes.
You should do. But I don't know, what do you think? Maybe you think, well, it's time for a change. Look forward to a change. And we're going to be talking to a Shadow Minister a little bit later on. It's interesting that we are now getting these more solid policies and more solid funding behind these policies.
I find it very
Labour
interesting
Party.
when you talk to young people of a certain age. Is it generation whatever? I don't know. You know, people who've never seen a Labour government. They are much more keen to give Keir Starmer a go.
Oh yeah, well,
and it's others who remember previous Labour governments and maybe don't have quite the same rosy-tinted view, who are struggling worse.
No, but maybe that's unfair.
No, well,
because they're not. You know, the Labour Party is not what it was in the 70s and 80s. Well, it's not even what it was in the 90s and 2000s.
Yes.
You know, it's you know, and you could say the same about the Tories, of course. I mean, all parties evolve and change and all the rest of it. So maybe that's an unfair analysis.
It could be, but I think it haunts an older generation. They remember things about Labour governments they didn't like. And the youngsters are prepared to give them a go.
Well, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. It's 8:17. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening today.
Well, a man handcuffed himself to the gates of Buckingham Palace yesterday afternoon. The Met Police says that he also threatened to harm himself, and then the London ambulance was called into the scene too. He was later detained under the Mental Health Act.
Some parents and children face disruption today as teachers in England on strike once again. Members of the National Education Union in schools and sixth form colleges are walking out, demanding a pay increase and extra money for school budgets.
And Twitter is threatening to take illegal action against Meta over the new social media platform called Threads. More than 30 million people have signed up for the app since its launch on Wednesday. But Twitter says it's stealing its own ideas and trade secrets.
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole Threads thing I find very interesting.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, I mean, even our own campaign has been amassing more and more names since we went on air at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's going up very quickly. Let me just have a look, because it was 147,000. We're now at 156,000.
That's brilliant. If you want to get involved,
isn't it interesting?
Don't kill cash. That's the basic thing. It's at the moment it's a petition, and if you look at that little QR code in the corner of the screen there, and you go up to that QR code with your phone on its camera app, then you'll be directed to a page where you can sign the petition too, or you can go to
gbnews.com/cash.
Thank you. Yeah.
Robert in Aston says, in a cashless society, how do you pay for raffle tickets, small amounts of sweets, a tip for giving good service, donations for charities? You could go on and on and on.
True.
Which is true. Interestingly, Jim in Lowestoft, hi Jim, says, I don't want to see cash die out, but from a trader's point of view, cash is expensive to handle. Electronic payments are faster into accounts and safer.
Effie in Manchester said, I'm very worried about this cashless agenda that seems to be pushing our lives into a state-run entity. What are we supposed to do when travelling to countries that don't allow their currency to be pre-bought in the UK, of which there are many?
Yeah. Ian says, and against a fair point, regarding a cashless society, how would you manage if you lost your mobile phone? It could take days to access your own money. And a lot of people now, I've always got a wallet on me with cards and things in, but a lot of people do just beep their phone.
Yeah, but you
lose that, you lose everything.
Utterly lost if you lose your phone.
Well, you would do for other reasons.
Yeah.
But if you can't access any money, if that's the only way you access your pay for anything,
yeah, then you're really up. What's it, creek? Aren't you? Nearly said it.
Oh, don't.
But you are.
Up that creek without a paddle.
Yes, exactly.
Or as David Mellor said before we came on air, in a barbed wire canoe.
Yes, that's right.
Which is one I've never heard before.
No, me
You were saying that about the PM.
Yeah, he's in a barbed wire canoe.
Yeah, anyway. Keep your thoughts coming through. I mean, I just think it's really interesting that it's really grabbed your attention this one, which says a lot, doesn't it?
I tell you what, though, will cheer you up. We're doing really well at Wimbledon, we Brits. Suddenly there's a whole new stream of people coming in, young, really talented Brits, and they're doing well at the moment in the first week of Wimbledon.
We'll get more with Paul Coyte after this.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
8:26, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
That's Wimbledon, isn't it, at the moment? And I'm really enjoying it. But there's also other sport going on. I suppose the man who should tell us all about it is Paul Coyte.
Oh, yes, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Can I just say that Andy Murray, I think, is a remarkable human being. I really do. I think he's a fantastic fella. I mean, he used to get a lot of stick in the early days, didn't he? But I think he's a remarkable man. The way he goes about his business and what he did yesterday as well.
With a metal hip?
With a metal hip.
Is he the first ever tennis player to play with him?
No, there was a couple of... I can't remember their name. There were twins, and one of them... I don't think they both had, like, matching hips, the fact they were twins. But and he came back, and he was the inspiration behind Andy to actually say, go ahead and get it. But it's incredible, the fact that he can play at the level he is. He never wants to... I think he plays because purely... I mean, it's because of the love. And when you see... I think you saw that documentary, didn't you, Anne? The documentary about Andy Murray, and it went through all the trials and tribulations and the operation, and then he came through that. And the work...
He didn't do the voiceover on it, did he?
He didn't do the voiceover.
No. He hasn't got a career in commentary after this, has he really? He's got to keep playing tennis because there's no way he's going to be a commentator.
Listen, you leave him alone. No. You leave him alone. He's a remarkable human being.
Human being.
He is a remarkable human being.
The news is that he's done incredibly well. He showed his old spark again. And then at 11 o'clock they had to stop play because there's a curfew at Wimbledon now. They have to stop play at 11.
Exactly.
So he's back today.
He is back today because Carlos Alcaraz plays today, who I think will be in the final with Novak Djokovic. I don't think it's a big call to actually make that because he's the world #1. But once that game is out the way, once he's played, then it's back to Murray and Tsitsipas. So the way they say is that it will begin no earlier than 3 p.m. Now, this is not going to be going on now until the very early hours again, or going on till early hours as far as Wimbledon's concerned. But the game will be finished. So he needs to play Tsitsipas 2 sets to 1 up. And for those that watched it, and I think most of us did, well, just look at that and think, you know, Tsitsipas, he looks younger, he looks fitter, he looks quicker. And then Andy does that thing again and turns it around.
What does this overnight hiatus do to either of them?
Well, yes, and also the weight as well, because Andy, I mean, they were hitting up about 2 o'clock at Wimbledon, so 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then there's all the waiting around. So, obviously, they can't do jigsaws now because they're banned, so you can't get your jigsaw out, so you've got to find some other thing
And you can't eat, I presume. No, not if you could be called any moment to just go and play 5 sets.
Well, that's it. I mean, if I was there, I'd think, well, you know, I'll go and fill my boots, you know, steak and chips or something, but you can't do any of that. You have to be match ready, and you don't know what's going on because you're sitting waiting for the other one, which then actually continued. Then there was the 5-setter with Liam Brodie, and then the women's game straight after that, and so we had to wait.
Well, there's lots going on.
There really is.
With that.
There is.
Let's talk cricket.
Let's do that. I mean, there's lots going on with that. The Ashes, still so exciting. We're 2-0 down. England dropped some catches yesterday, but I'm still very hopeful.
Still doing thingy ball?
Bazball. They are still doing Bazball, but Mitchell Marsh played yesterday for Australia, and he's a batsman, and he came up for Australia for the first time, certainly in this Ashes anyway. Scored 100, the second fastest that's been hit by an Australian in the Ashes. The first one was Victor Trumper back in 1902. So I think he was actually on the ship over there from the early days. So then actually he was one of the early days. And the last person to hit such a quick century, the fastest century hit at Headingley, was Ian Botham back in 1981. Wow. And that was that legendary Headingley test where things turned around in the Ashes. It certainly did. So who knows how we're going to go. So we're 195 runs behind, 7 wickets in hand. Johnny Bairstow making sure he won't get run out this time. But honestly, it's all hanging by a thread. So this is only after day 1. It won't go 5 days. But very excited about that one. So yes. British Grand Prix. Shall I mention the British Grand Prix?
Oh, yes, please,
I did have some messages saying, you've done the sport, there's 40,000 people at Silverstone today, and you haven't mentioned it. Very upset because you don't want to upset the F1 fans.
No.
So, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, this is the home Grand Prix, so this is the one he wants to win. Mercedes are looking better, but still it's all about Red Bull. But as far as Mercedes is concerned, Brad Pitt is going to be driving for Mercedes.
No, I didn't know he was an F1 driver.
Well, I didn't either, Anne, to be honest with you. But there's a new film which is being made, which is partly produced by Lewis Hamilton. So you'd kind of think that if it's a produced by Lewis Hamilton film, it's going to be involving F1. So Brad Pitt, the film is called Apex, and they're going to film, I think, in between the practice sessions today.
Right.
So he's going to be in a Mercedes, which is going to be adapted so he can drive it okay. Yeah. And then with everything else, then they can put it, and it will look exactly like he's in the race. So they film him in that part.
Well, there he is, seen at Silverstone yesterday.
There he is. He looks pretty good for 59 there, doesn't he, Brad? But he plays an ageing... I mean, really, you can make up the plot here. All I know is that he plays an ageing Formula One driver who comes back after 30 years. So we're trying to work out what happened. What do you think? There was a bad crash 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think he broke his leg.
Broke his leg. I'm never going to race again.
Turned alcoholic.
He turned alcoholic probably because his best friend was killed in the race, I imagine.
Or his glamorous wife left him.
Of course, that happened as well. And there'll be a child. Yeah. There'll be a child involved.
He probably put a load of weight on through drinking.
Yes, and his son said, Dad, how can I respect you when you can't race anymore? Son, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show you.
Yeah. And he becomes an inspiration to a new generation.
That's what he'll be. Yeah. And then he'll win the race and everything will be fantastic. And then they'll probably make a sequel and then another one after that as well. Apex. You don't need to see it because we know exactly what's going to happen. We've reviewed the film and it hasn't even happened yet.
Good morning, Brad, if you're watching. We already know what's going on.
I think it'd be quite interesting. It'd be interesting to see. I wish I was there to see them film it.
Sure.
Yeah. Because then when they add all the effects, and
it will look amazing.
It's going to look absolutely fantastic.
It's not like the old Grand Prix or the one with James Garner back in the 60s, which was done in the Monaco Grand Prix. And it was all very good. And Steve McQueen made some as well, didn't he?
Yes,
but it's never going to be probably how this is going to be.
And Ron Howard directed one about the drivers.
Yes, he did. That was the Nicky Lauda, James Hunt, 76.
And that was good, even
for somebody that was a very good film.
Yes, actually, that was a good film.
It was very good.
Although I wasn't sure about some of the wigs being used to make it look like the 70s. That was a little questionable for me. Maybe they could use AI on the hair.
It was questionable when it was real in the 70s as well. Men walked around with moustaches and hairdos that looked like wigs.
It was the glamour days, though, of Formula One, when you could drive Formula One, smoking a fag with one arm and still drive at 200 miles an hour.
Got to say, Paul, what do you know about hair, Paul?
Exactly. Well, I know. I can look and admire, Stephen, is what I can do. Look back on those days of the 70s. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
Thank you.
A pleasure. I'll tell you, in the 90s, I had I dyed my hair blonde and had a little ponytail.
You didn't really?
Did
you?
Yeah, when I was at...
picture?
I haven't got
Somewhere.
I haven't got a picture of the ponytail.
Not from behind, you see. Every photo's going to be
well, it was very early 90s, like 1990.
As you were driving your car.
Then.
No.
The pigtails swinging in the wind.
I know. I knew how to live there.
They'll come back at some point.
Thankfully, we didn't have camera phones then as well, so not so many photographs were taken.
No, if you took the film to Boots to process that, they'd probably refuse, I'd imagine.
They would have put a little mark on it. Do you remember?
Yes.
Used to get some back. This was such appalling quality, we couldn't print it properly or something.
And they were usually the banned ones, weren't they? Were they the banned ones, Anne?
The banned ones?
The naughty ones. Yeah.
No, well, I don't
I'm afraid we can't.
ones. I mean, just fuzzy ones.
Oh, just fuzzy ones. Okay.
Now you get an app that will actually defuzz and de-blur your pictures.
Oh, really? Or
there
blur,
is one,
I prefer, as the case may be.
It will de-blur them.
And people standing outside, and then you see them, they're pretty like this. Oh, God, yeah. Looking at every... always first thing you do is look through the pictures. Wait for 3 weeks. I've still got Holiday in Tenerife from 1984 I still haven't got developed yet. That reminds me, I must get that done.
You must get that done.
Just got to find somewhere to get it done. That's the problem.
I'd pay good money to see that.
I bet you would.
Money, I would.
You can even get an app that de-wobbles your video now as well, I've discovered, which is very useful.
It will do. It'll crop it quite heavily, though.
Oh, will it? Oh, you know all about this already, do you?
Yeah, well, if you're going to crop... It's what you do. If you de-wobble video, and even when you do it on your phone now, it has to crop it so it can then reposition the frame around the wobbly
bits.
Clever,
isn't it?
It's very clever, yeah.
And can it do anything about the video camera that was filmed as I was walking along and I'd realised it was turned on and it's just a view of my feet on holiday? Can it actually do anything about those?
Sad.
Sure, there's a market for that.
I think there is. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Point, get off.
Thank you. Goodbye.
But I'd love to hear from you, actually, if you've had any photographic problems like that and needed an app. If only an app had existed at the time.
Yes. Freddie Gray and Emma Burnell taking us through the papers very shortly. This is Breakfast on GB News. It is 8:40. Good morning to you. Time for the papers this morning, and we're joined by the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and political journalist Emma Burnell. Good to see you both. I love this in The Times, Emma. Simon Callow criticising trigger warnings.
Yeah, he's written a letter to The Times. I think his tipping point, there was a trigger warning on a production of The Sound of Music, which, you know, may contain Nazis, which is, yeah, I think you kind of know that going in.
Well, you'd hope so.
And he said, you know, the whole point of trigger warnings belies the whole notion of theatre, and theatre shouldn't be just about telling safe stories. It is literally a safe space to examine all the aspects of human nature. So you can be watching something as violent as, say, Coriolanus, or, you know, really, really kind of intense drama of Hamlet, which is, you know, very difficult, emotional. But you do it sat safely in your seat, eating your ice cream, drinking your wine, etc. And I think he's kind of, the point he's making is that you shouldn't be denying yourself those difficult experiences of theatre because it's the safest environment in which to examine these things.
I quite like a trigger warning.
Do you?
It makes you pay attention.
You do.
It's like when on a TV show when they go, warning, this may contain scenes of a violent nature or something, you're suddenly like, oh, all right, I'll...
Well, I even do that if it says may contain flash photography. I'm waiting for the flash.
to be startled, yeah.
I agree with you. I don't see that it's... I don't see that it's entirely a bad thing.
Oh, I do.
I mean, I think when I put on plays, as you know, I'm also a playwright, and if there's swearing, then you put something on, and you put it on the website because people might book for kids and might feel really uncomfortable having some of those things. So it's perfectly acceptable to say this has got, you know, certain themes, whatever.
Or sex scenes.
Sex scenes, indeed. My first play had one of those.
Well, and did you put a trigger warning? No?
There was a content warning, so it was basically, you know, this contains adult themes.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Which is perfectly reasonable.
So you don't have people booking for children.
But I think there are, you know, if you're taking it down the line to the point where you're having to warn people that there are Nazis in The Sound of Music, I think that might be just taking it a little too far.
Well, it's a whole bag of nuts saying this may contain nuts, isn't it? I mean, that's how ridiculous it gets.
I do like Simon Callow, though. He always seems to be very sensible about everything.
He's wonderful.
Yeah. No,
and a marvellous actor as well.
Yeah.
Oh, marvellous.
Marvellous, darling. Marvellous.
You went very thespian.
I went very thespian there, I didn't I?
Go on, Em.
No, I was going to say to Freddie, you've been looking in The Times, then,
Yes.
About what happened to certain people during COVID.
Yes, well, 600,000 people dropped out of the workforce in COVID, many of them early retirees. And latest studies suggest that they are actually in much greater levels of poverty than people had previously thought, and that it was a disaster, and that it's very important for the British economy that we get a lot of these people back into work, because, as we all know by now, productivity is not good in Britain compared to other countries. And so that's the gist behind this story. But I find it extraordinary that 600,000 people...
It's a huge amount, isn't it?
...dropped out of the workforce.
But this seems to imply... you got the impression, when we talk about all these people taking early retirement, you think, well, it's people who've got a good pension pot, they're in a secure position, they say, actually, this is too much hassle, I don't need to work anymore, therefore I'm giving it up. But when clearly they haven't had enough resources in their pension pot and all the rest of it.
I think COVID was obviously a very odd time, and I think a lot of people had a sort of life-changing moment where they thought, actually, I'm doing a job I don't like. Why am I doing it?
Well, yeah, but that doesn't... Well, we could all do that at various points in our career,
Yeah,
but I'm not enjoying...
actually, I do enjoy my job, so I can't complain.
Well, I can't complain here, but in other places,
yes.
So I'd like to quit.
But because of furlough and the fact that we were living, during lockdown, we were living very quiet lives, I suppose we might have been lulled into a false sense of security that, hey, I can manage like this. Why go back to work? And now it has hit people very hard because you can't go on for long.
No, and I think Freddie hit on a really important point, which is that there's this sense, I think, that we think all people over 60, boomer generation, you know, have the best economic, but actually, people between 60 and 70 are really quite diverse, and there are some people in that generation who, because of the economy that they started working in, have never really built up those big pension pots. They've never had that job security. because they started working at the beginning of the huge sort of Thatcher revolution. So, the end of the unions, all of those things. So there's actually a big, I think about a quarter, it says in that, who are really, really struggling. And I think that we just don't think of people of that age and that generation living in that kind of poverty, but they actually have, throughout their working lives, been hit by all of these different shocks that hit different workforces.
And I tell you what, if they are of an age where they have got younger sons and daughters who are trying to get on going back to the bank of mum and dad and asking for help as well, they're being sort of caught in a sandwich, aren't they?
It's difficult if the bank of mum and dad is also bust.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and also, if you're at 60 to 70, it's quite possible that you've got children and grandchildren, quite possible caring responsibilities for grandchildren, as well as parents still alive. Yes. So you've got caring responsibilities at both ends of the scale as well.
And before COVID, you would have been the earning generation, and now you're not.
OK, let's move on to something which matters to me more, frankly, in the front of the Daily Star. We've been eating our Weetabix wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I am shocked and appalled.
She's shocked to your very core.
How can you eat a Weetabix wrong?
Well, because you're putting them in the bowl and pouring milk on top of your Weetabix.
Yeah. Wrong.
No.
Wrong. Apparently, according to the Weetabix people, milk first, Weetabix second.
And you put it in like a sort of boat?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Weetabix boat.
But then it goes soggy from the bottom up.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
but it retains
top-down or bottom-up
top.
sogginess. This is the great debate of the UK.
Well, it's a good debate.
It's a good debate.
Yeah.
I still miss the skinhead Weetabix. Do you remember them from the old adverts in the 80s?
Yes.
Very odd advertising campaign of Weetabix marching around being really odd. I think it was brilliant, if you've had your Weetabix.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, the Daily started a cover about people dipping their sausage rolls in
Yes.
And we did
it here, yeah.
We did it together. We dipped it in.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
I'm glad that you're not making me eat Weetabix this morning. I'm not a big Weetabix.
I don't drink milk, so I'd be completely useless at this.
I like a Weetabix.
Well, was it Weetabix that started the whole thing of how many can you...
No, that was shredded wheat.
Shredded wheat.
I think that the hard Weetabix was a counter to the shredded wheat. I can eat 3.
Yeah, 3. Can eat 6.
Macho cereal. This is what...
Macho cereal. I quite like a bit of macho cereal.
Yeah.
So there you go.
With sliced banana on the top.
Now, I know you were very desperate, Freddie, to look at The Guardian and talk about Taylor Swift.
Well,
you're a huge fan.
So I am now a Taylor Swift fan because my daughter is a fanatic.
Is she?
So I have to follow all the going on.
Well, what's the news then? What's she doing?
She's got a tour of East Asia, and the tickets are in such demand, it's insane. They go for incredible prices. Anyway, but she's under huge pressure to book more events, even though she's already doing 130 concerts or something.
That's ridiculous.
She's got to do more.
It's actually become a political scandal in the Philippines because she's not playing in the Philippines because there isn't the infrastructure. And this is now, the government of the Philippines, not known for their responsiveness to the populace. And this is what's actually causing ructions for them at the moment. It's extraordinary reach.
And I didn't realise just how important she is to people.
No. Yeah.
No.
It's extraordinary.
They really love her.
Yeah.
My daughter thinks she's... My daughter said the other day, I want to have loads of boyfriends because Taylor Swift's had loads of boyfriends.
Oh, well, there you go. That's good as well.
She sounds like a good role model for my child.
Yes. I don't know a Taylor Swift song. I don't know.
Shake It Off is about as much as I know. I do love Shake It Off. It's a great track.
Oh, I know that. Yes, I know that. Yes.
Go on, sing it for us.
And the player's gonna play.
Yeah, well, that's as good as you're going to get. Yeah.
Don't ask me to sing. You'll lose your viewership.
No, it's a decent tune, but I don't know. It's a sign of getting old, I'm afraid.
Because I haven't got kids. I was saying to Freddie's getting that regeneration of his music taste that I just haven't got at all.
Don't you?
Secondary socialisation, they call it, Freddie.
Well, so Spotify, because of my daughter, Spotify thinks I love Taylor Swift, so it keeps messaging me going, we know you love Taylor Swift, you might like this.
Oh.
And I don't.
No.
Whereas I get all Leonard Cohen.
That's the digital business pulling you in.
Oh, there you go. Well, on that note...
I did download Threads in the last
Oh, you have done it?
I've done it. I haven't posted anything yet.
No. But it's quite easy to do because you just log in with your Instagram stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They've got you.
They have got you.
Got you.
Easily done. Lovely. Freddie, I shall follow you on
Great, let's follow each other.
Yeah, oh, let's. Should we be threads friends?
Yeah, I like everything you...
Oh, excellent, yes. Lovely. Emma, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
Good
so
to see you.
Right, the time's just coming up to 8:50. And 4 boys tragically lost their lives, you'll remember, after falling through ice on a lake in Solihull back in December.
Yeah, now, an early hearing heard that they died from the effects of drowning, and today the inquest into their deaths is set to conclude. It's all happening at Birmingham Coroner's Court.
Our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, joins us now. And a very good morning to you, Jack. So this will probably be the last day, will it, today? We'll hear what the coroner has to say.
Yeah, that's right. And back in December, there was a preliminary hearing, as you were saying, where the boys were said to have died from the effect of drowning. In that hearing as well, back in December, we also heard that the three of the boys were rescued after 22 minutes in the water. The 4th boy was rescued after 31 minutes. But because the police investigation was still ongoing, because that preliminary hearing was only a week after the incident back in December, it was adjourned until today, where we will hear for the final time, of course, the evidence from the police about their investigation. So, of course, a cause of death can properly be evaluated and also set by the coroner as well. And also, we're going to hear pen portraits from each of the family about each of the boys. It's likely to be, of course, a very, very emotional time in the court today because of how much of a tragedy, of course, it was. The 3 emergency services involved today will give evidence and a summary of their response to the incident in the coroner's court today, as well as I said, with evidence of hospital care given. Louise Hunt, the senior coroner for Birmingham Coroner's Court, did say at that hearing back in December that it is very sadly that they died from the effect of drowning, and that she did rule as well that there would be no post-mortem for the boys, for each of them to respect their dignity and respect. Of course, Sakib Bhatti is the MP for Meriden. That's the constituency where Kingshurst is, and this tragic incident happened. Last month, he actually wrote to Nick Gibb, the schools minister, urging him to highlight the importance of water safety and the implications of cold water shock. There is this upcoming review of the relationships, health and sex education curriculum guidelines. He feels that it's vitally important that, given the tragedy of the incident, of course, the unfortunate ages of those boys involved, 6-year-old Samuel Butler, 8-year-old Finley Butler, 11-year-old Thomas Stewart and 10-year-old Jack Johnson, that given their ages, that it's important that the importance of water safety is now highlighted in schools so that tragedies like this don't happen again. Of course, it's a tragedy for each of the families of each of the 4 boys that have been involved in this incident, but of course 10-year-old Jack Johnson didn't even know the boys that were in the family. So the final hearing of the inquest today, I'm sure, will give some well-needed conclusions to this tragic event.
OK, Jack, thanks very much indeed. Keep you up to date with that, of course. And I've got to say, on a similarly gloomy note, Mark's been in touch and says, surprised you haven't mentioned or remembered, and I've got to say I hadn't, that it's 18 years since the London terrorist bombs.
The 7th of the 7th?
Yeah.
Of course it is. Gosh.
18 years.
I can't believe that. I can remember it like it was last year or something. Because everybody was so shocked. And if you had relatives or anybody in and around central London, obviously you were terrified that they might be involved.
Yeah, if you're remembering anyone who was involved in that in any way, shape or form, our thoughts are with you today. It's frightening. Absolutely. I mean, I was working that morning.
I was a mum with kids in London, and of course it was commuter time as well.
It was, yeah. Just before 9 o'clock.
Absolutely terrified. You couldn't get through. Of course, that's the trouble. One of the troubles with mobile phones is the cell can get swamped, can't it?
Yeah.
You just can't get through when you desperately need to know news.
Yes.
Anyway, thanks for reminding us, Mark. That's really important.
Yeah, it is, actually. I'm glad you've pointed that out. Up next, we're going to have all the very latest from Westminster because, of course, more problems for the Prime Minister. It looks like there could be another by-election on the cards. It's the last thing Rishi Sunak needs at the moment. We'll bring you more on that. First, though, here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. Going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine. A balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time. Gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of July. Today, more pressure on the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak could face a fifth by-election after MP Chris Pincher was suspended for 8 weeks.
The Wimbledon school community is in shock after an 8-year-old girl was killed by a car that collided with a school's end-of-term tea party in South London yesterday.
And homeowners may have to spend almost £14,000 improving energy efficiency measures. We'll talk to consumer champion Will Hodson in the next 10 minutes to explain what this could mean to you.
And how is the weather going to look like this weekend?
It's a damp start for some, but many will be very warm and sunny today. The weekend promises some big thunderstorms, however. Join me later for a full GB News weather.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, we've been asking you about our Don't Kill Cash campaign, and if you want to... It's not about not going digital and not using your cards and things, but it's about saying we've still got to have cash in society for those people who want it and need it. As we're asking for some protection for that, as we all seem to be heading towards a cashless society. If you want to scan that QR code, so open your camera on your mobile and just point it at that, it'll take you to gbnews.com/cash, where you can sign the petition. And it's really interesting with all your thoughts coming through on this one. Linda says in Glasgow, we have a tradition on wedding days. As the couple get into their car after the service, the groom throws out a few handfuls of coins so the local kids gathered outside. It's known as the scramble. Couldn't do that by card.
No, it wouldn't be so much fun if you tried.
No, it's interesting though, isn't it? I've never heard of that.
David in Hampshire says, although we do use cards, we never put tips on a card. If you do, you're actually giving the banks a percentage of that tip.
Oh, yeah, that's the point.
Didn't know that.
Alan's a manager in hospitality, and since COVID, restaurant and bar staff rarely get cash tips.
And Philip says, imagine pocket money. It was fun always getting pocket money. And what if pocket money became pocket cards? Not quite so exciting, but maybe children see it differently.
Yeah. Where's that? Oh, here we go. Lynn says, I live in a tiny village in North Norfolk, Trimmingham. We run a tea dance every month for people with dementia. We rely on change in our collection to keep us going. And that's the thing, I think. Anyway, so far, 159,000 of you agree, because you've signed the petition at gbnews.com.
Let's see if we can get it up to 160,000 in the next half hour.
Yeah, before we go off air, that would be nice.
Scan the QR code. Oh, there it is. There it is. And you'll be able to use your vote and actually sign the petition.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's all these little bits and bobs that you sort of think, like the tea dance in Trimmingham and all that sort of thing, reliant on cash, which I think is interesting that people like me forget about, frankly.
If we're going to head towards a cashless society, let it die out very gradually rather than force it on us. I think that's what most people seem to be thinking.
That's a fair point.
One day, you can imagine in 50 years' time, we won't use cash. It'll be something else. We'll have microchips in our forehead or something. It'll just go ching like that. It will be something like that, won't it?
It'll be scanned as you walk in the shop.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it will happen.
They'll track your every move and they'll be able to read your brainwaves to see what it is you're going in the shop for.
Oh, that could be dangerous.
It will be. It'll be like that one day.
No, I didn't want that. I only came in for a pint of milk.
It's like cookies that follow you around on the computer.
Oh.
Once you've looked at one thing, these cookies for things I looked at... Do you remember we were looking at water butts the other day?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I get followed now by water butt cookies where...
Oh, yeah.
Whatever I'm doing on the computer, up comes buy this water butt, buy that water butt.
Yeah.
It's a way of reminding you that maybe I should.
I ordered one, actually.
Oh, has it arrived yet?
No, not yet.
But you ordered it ages ago.
Yeah, it's coming next week.
Oh, all right. That'll be exciting.
So I got talked
then
into
we'll
that.
be completely in a drought and there'll
be
no
in a
rain.
drought. It's not going to fill up for a year.
Absolutely.
But never, it'd be there. So we got that now. So for the garden, we can use that.
Very good. I'm glad to hear.
And I'm not doing it to be environmental. I'm doing it to save money on the water bill.
But you will be being environmental as well.
As a side element, I'll be environmental.
Little halo.
So there you go. 159,805. Now, jumping up.
Coming.
So not long to go. Now, Rishi Sunak is facing more pressure as the Conservative Party is likely to be hit with another by-election.
And that, of course, comes after the MP Chris Pincher is now facing a possible 8-week Commons suspension as an inquiry found that he had groped 2 men at a club in London last year.
Let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who's in Downing Street for us this morning. I mean, a by-election is not guaranteed, but it seems extremely likely, Olivia. 5 on the cards for the Prime Minister. It's difficult to see, at the moment at least, how he could win any of them.
Well, absolutely. He's facing what sounds like 5 by-elections in the next month or so. There are 3 scheduled for the end of this month. And as you say, in some respects, all 5 of them are pretty damaging for the Prime Minister. It's now being said that if he manages to only lose 1 or 2, then that will be seen as a sort of Conservative victory, which is a very strange situation to be in. In Chris Pincher's constituency of Tamworth, he has a majority of 19,000, which in normal times would be considered a very, very safe seat for the Conservatives. But obviously Labour is going to throw everything it's got at this by-election. It's going to have a lot of campaigners on the ground. Expect to see Labour activists flooding up to Tamworth. Expect to see all sorts of shadow ministers there as well. And the cloud under which Chris Pincher has had to leave Parliament will probably have an effect too. When an MP has to resign or is suspended in these circumstances, their constituents feel disillusioned with that party, and there often tends to be a swing the other way. As for the other seats, David Warburton's seat in Somerset and Frome, which the by-election is due to be held on the 20th of July, the Conservatives have a big majority there as well. We're looking at another 20,000 or so. But the Lib Dems have really got their eye on that seat. And although it's been a safe Conservative seat for the last few elections, before that, if you look a bit further back into history, it was a real Lib Dem stronghold. So they have the sort of campaigning infrastructure there, if you like. So that's 2 seats with massive majorities, which the Tories look really quite seriously in danger of losing. Then, of course, there's Boris Johnson's own seat of Uxbridge, which has a majority of just 7,000. In a way, that's not so much of a worry for Rishi Sunak, because it seems almost certain that they will lose it. The only hope for them there is that in Uxbridge, people are very against the ULEZ charge. So it's a pretty bleak picture for the Prime Minister as we head into the weekend, and he's really looking at damage limitation at this stage.
Right, well, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks very much indeed. The sun, is it shining on Downing Street at the moment? I think inside, perhaps not. Shall we also now talk to Shadow Culture Secretary Lucy Powell, who joins us now, I think, from Manchester. A very good morning to you. Before you talk about anything else, can we just ask you, all these by-elections coming up, is Labour really ready for them?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's very sunny here in Manchester, by the way, as well. Yes, I've been in Selby myself this week and last week. The one in Yorkshire, which is the closest one to me. And we've had teams and teams of people out there right from the off, and we're getting a lot of support in Selby, which, as your reporter just said there, is a very traditional, safe, Conservative seat. So I know from colleagues as well that they've been out and about in all the other by-elections as well. So, yeah, we're ready for them, and we're absolutely in them to win them, even though on paper, the Selby one certainly looks quite a stretch for Labour.
Look, I know today Sir Keir Starmer is unveiling details about the curriculum, how the curriculum would change if there was a Labour government, and talking about sort of creative arts and music, sport, drama, all that sort of thing. And, I mean, look, it's not to knock it, because I know they play a very big role in how minds develop, and, you know, it's an interesting and an important part of British life. But I do wonder, when we talk about education, shouldn't we be focusing on practical skills for a practical life? You know, teaching people how to have a mortgage, how to manage debt, all that sort of thing.
Well, it's that as well. So what we're talking about today is, and yesterday in the launch of our opportunity mission for everybody, is to ensure that there is that broad curriculum, but that we're really equipping people for the jobs of the future and the life of the future. So that is just as much about creative skills. It's also about digital skills, speaking skills, as Keir has been talking about as well. So we have an education system at the moment that's become increasingly narrow, focusing on some of those core subjects which are very important, like, of course, reading, writing and math skills. But in order for our young people to really seize the opportunity of all these jobs of the future with the onset of AI and digital, but also we've got a booming creative industry sector here in the UK in screen, film, TV, gaming, fashion, massive vacancies there of very highly paid, skilled jobs. And we're just not equipping our young people to access those jobs of the future. And that's why we're going to be changing some of the accountability measures for schools to ensure that young people are also offered, alongside those core subjects, are also offered vocational and creative subjects as well.
Meanwhile, we adults are tussling with the sort of cultural dilemma surrounding end-to-end encryption and, our right to privacy when we're on a digital platform. What do you make of this sort of cultural debate of that at the moment?
Well, look, it is a big debate. We've got the online safety bill going through its latter stages at the moment in the House of Lords. We've finally sort of had it in the Commons over recent months, and it's a really important piece of regulation. The social media space does need regulating, not just because of what's happening on there, but because of the business models, this kind of engagement. If you get engaged with and you get more engaged with the algorithms of these business models, which, as Molly Russell's family said, monetize misery and do lead to some really harmful and difficult outcomes, whether that's misogyny, hate, racism, all sorts of things, which are now, some of which are not included in this bill. And as part of that, there is a big debate about end-to-end encryption. And I think it is a finely balanced argument. We have got a right to privacy. We have got a right to our messages being private. But there are some occasions, very few occasions, but some occasions where the security services, say, for example, if there was a threat of a terrorism act or otherwise, might need to get access to some of that material. And that's the debate that we're really having in Parliament at the moment. I think it is a finely balanced debate. And, I'm very strongly for privacy and free speech. But I'm also very mindful of the fact that our security services, in very minor and small number of occasions, do need access to that information.
Can I ask you, Lucy Powell, do you back our Don't Kill Cash campaign? This idea that even though society is changing, becoming more cashless, that we still need to protect cash for those people who need it?
We do need to protect cash. I think it's an important issue to highlight. And, of course, I'm the digital secretary as well, and we are moving into very quickly in this digital age. Things are changing very quickly, whether that's a cash becoming cashless and everybody paying for things electronically, or whether that's people wanting more human interaction when it comes to dealing with problems and services and utilities and public services and so on. You don't always want everything to be digital, but there are great opportunities with that for more efficiencies and productivities and better services. But we can't lose sight of the fact that we do need these authentic and real interactions as well. And cash is one of them. And of course, for small businesses, sometimes they pay less charges, of course, when they're using cash as well.
Lucy Powell, really good to see you this morning.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed.
And you can sign up. You can scan the QR code. Just telling her.
Yeah, sure she will. Sure she will. Now, coming up, how energy efficient is your home? We'll find out, well, potentially. This is Breakfast on GB News.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty hot and sunny for most today, but it's a damp start across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Quite gusty too across western Scotland and through Northern Ireland. But those gusty winds are pushing the rain away. This afternoon we could spark some thunderstorms, particularly to the west of Northern Ireland and across parts of western Scotland. But most places will be dry this afternoon and plenty of very warm sunshine for the bulk of England and Wales. Hotter than yesterday today for sure. Temperatures widely into the mid, even high 20s across eastern England, could reach 30 Celsius, and even further north, warmer and more humid than yesterday, with temperatures generally in the low 20s. It's going to be pretty warm and sticky tonight as well. Most places staying fine, a balmy summer's evening if you're heading out, but later in the night the cloud will start to increase from the southwest, and it will be a pretty tricky night for sleeping. A humid feel, temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid or even high teens, and again that humidity likely to be high and noticeable on Saturday. So tomorrow, again, plenty of hot, hazy sunshine over eastern areas and Scotland initially, but thundery showers breaking out initially over Wales, spreading further north and east during the day. Some torrential downpours possible tomorrow afternoon. Not everywhere catching them, but where they do occur, a lot of rain in a short space of time, gusty winds, hail and lightning too. Pretty warm and humid again in the east, but turning fresher from the west for Sunday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, the GB News Don't Kill Cash campaign is now over 162,000 signatures. That's up 15,000 since we've been on air today.
That is remarkable. Thank you for joining in.
So if you want to get involved, grab your phone, scan that QR code just by opening your camera app and holding the phone in front of it, or just go to gbnews.com/cash and you can add your name to it. And as we talked to Lucy Powell, Shadow Business Secretary, earlier on, the politicians are listening.
Well, I think most people are agreed that why would we want to get rid of cash completely? We don't want to be forced into the situation. If it occurs gradually over many years, then fair enough. But at the moment, there are an awful lot of people who still want cash.
Yeah. Talking of things money, apparently a lot of us have spent in the region of about 14 grand improving energy efficiency measures in our homes. Otherwise, we're concerned our property's value could fall.
And it's interesting because according to the Times, around 60% of the total homes in England and Wales need such improvements, as the government is planning to make all homes reach an energy performance certificate rating of at least C by 2035.
Oh, well, let's talk to consumer champion from How to Save It, Will Hodson. Will, good to see you this morning. I can see the point of reaching this C level grade, but we need help to do it, don't we?
Exactly. When you're talking about £14,000, should be said that's a London figure, so it'd be cheaper in other parts of the country. This is not a personal finance investment. This is almost an infrastructural investment, which is why we need more help in the form of credit and loans, which is what I expect to see coming down the line if we're going to meet our targets by 2035.
So you're saying if you forked out the cash yourself and made a huge improvement, you probably wouldn't get any benefit back from it for yourself?
You would. You absolutely would. So there are two ways in which you get the benefit. First of all, you're going to be paying a lower energy bill every year. So let's take the example of putting in loft insulation. That might cost about £500, but it should save you about £300 per year. If you're in your house for 15 years, that adds up to £4,500. So that £500 investment at the beginning looks really good by the time you've saved nearly 10 times as much at the end of your stay. So it makes total sense in terms of saving every year, but also it will add value to your property. There's another report coming out today showing that increasingly people who are looking to buy homes are looking for energy efficiency, which makes total sense. It's where cost of living intertwines with climate concerns. So this is where we're going to see a lot of action from buyers, but also from the government.
Does that mean, it's an interesting point, does that mean people are going to pay more for energy efficient homes, or are they just going to pay less for those that haven't been upgraded?
Well, it's an interesting point because you talk about whether this is just we're doing it because we have to, or whether there's a fundamental addition to the value of your home by doing this work. Now, when I look at it, I think there is a fundamental addition to the value. I would pay more for a house if I've got two to choose from and it's semi-detached. This one's going to cost me £5,000 less a year to run than this one. I'm going to be there for 10, 15 years. This one is worth a little bit more to me.
So what you talked about roof insulation. Are there any other quick fixes that we could actually almost do ourselves, or at least get a man in to help, that would actually show that saving almost immediately?
So this is the way I would always encourage people to explore insulating their homes. Start with the investments that pay back fastest. Number one is loft, as we've discussed. People can do it on their own, but I'd recommend contacting the National Insulation Association. They can have one go around. The second most compelling investment is cavity walls. That might cost about £600, £700 to fill, but it's going to save you about £400 per year. Those are the most straightforward ones, and I should underline, many of us can actually get it done for free. Get in touch with your energy company. They have the energy company obligation, and for hundreds of thousands of Britons, you can get those insulation done free.
Wow.
I've got to ask, because loads of people have been in touch this morning saying, why is it not set in stone that all new builds in this country, and we keep saying we need to build loads of houses, that they don't have grey water supplies, solar panels, I mean, they will be insulated and all that better, we know that, but all these extra things that would save us all money, why isn't this set in stone now that this has to be done?
Because the home building industry has probably leaned on the government a little bit over the course of developing these rules. Something that boils my blood is the fact that it costs X to get a home up to energy, EPC level A to build. Now, if they don't do that, and the person who buys it has to bring it up to that level afterwards, it costs 4x, 5x, a multiple of it. So just from the point of view of efficiency, get the people to do it right and do it at the beginning.
Yeah, quite right too. Will, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. We're back bright and early in the morning. But up next, it's Britain's Newsroom with Tom and Ellie.